every one of the top 40 records being played on every radio station in the United States is a communication to the children to take a trip, to cop out, to groove. The psychedelic jackets on the record albums have their own hidden symbols.
This is a special question. We don't want you to smoke genetically modified ganja. We want you to smoke the real thing. We want you to smoke the natural herb. Some call it marijuana, some call it sensimedia, some call it lamb's bread, and some people call it ganja.
Welcome to another edition of the Adam Dunn Show. I am your host, Adam Dunn. We are late as usual. We get later and later every week. We just leave them guessing. How late will they be this week? Well, we've gone above and beyond the Call of Duty this week, and we started about 40-something minutes late. Oh, my God. It's okay. We may not even go the full 3 hours today. Who knows? We may not be able to.
15 minutes late because we started at 3:30.
Oh, yeah. Well, officially we started at 3. Unofficially we started at 3:30. Do we actually put it on 3:30 now these days?
I don't know.
We do?
I did
KTI.
the event at 3:30 today.
All right. You guys totally gave up on me, basically. Because before, we just say 3 and then, make them hang. That's how you build tension. It's like a hip-hop show, bro. You say the show's at, 9, but the guy doesn't come on until midnight, and you're just so tired by the time they actually come on, you could give a fuck. You're like, all right, the show sucked, whatever, who gives? 45 minutes? Great. I don't even want them to play any longer, because that's all they can play. Unlike us, we can go on for days. Speaking of going on for days, haven't seen this guy in a long time. I got a friend of mine named Red here who used to come to Amsterdam all the time with a little posse and hang out with me and all the crazies over there. And it was coincidentally, just happened to show up in town today. And I said, you know what? You're coming on the show. Actually, gave him about 10 minutes warning. So
surprise!
Everything we talk about will be fresh because we didn't even get a chance to hang out that much more than
this is unscripted.
Imagine that. Adam Dunn Show, unscripted. It's like the totally new idea. Normally, very scripted. Everything is written down. Really organized. Red's actually coming out of Indiana, which, if you know the background to the bubblegum story, how it gets all confusing and fragmented, well, we might be able to kind of get it clearer today. But, as I've said many times, when I came out with the bubblegum in Amsterdam, it was without knowing at all, just knowing I got something that was really good. Great minds think alike in the cannabis world more than anything. So if you think of something, they're going to think of something. The timing was similar, and it created more confusion. So now you have the Indiana cut. You got my thing. You got other people claiming whatever. So we'll try to clarify a little of that today, and we'll also go over just some of the wacky times we had in Amsterdam. Also in the studio, I believe she's supposed to be here. We had Annie Rieken, who, again, another Amsterdammer. It's these last few shows have just literally been old friends coming through, which is always fun. It's a good way to bring back some of those synapses. You're like, oh, I haven't thought of that since fucking whatever ago. But Annie Rieken, who was also pretty much I think she was doing the Cup around 95, which was right after we did it. She took over and actually legitified it way better, and way better than we did. Ours was woo, we're partying. But ours was good and small, but she actually brought it to the next level. So if she comes through, we'll talk about that. But she also is famous for being so on point. She was it's like if somebody was trying right now to, fucking blow the whistle on all the bullshit going on in the White House. Sort of similar. She blew the whistle on the whole high times shenanigans with Greenhouse over there and stuff, and it was to her demise in the end. And so we can go over the high crimes and low times of Amsterdam with Annie Rieken. I keep trying to get her to write a book. I'm like, Annie, you got to write a book because now it's okay. It's years ago.
Right.
Yeah, why not? And who else? I don't know. That's about it. I think that's all we got on the show in the studio. If you guys want to call in, it is 720-310-8237. That's TADS at the end if you're into those letters and you actually can follow that on your thing. TADS. Give us a call and make our show more entertaining than it is. That's always it's always up to you guys. I'm going to blame it all on the people listening to the show for not being entertaining enough. if they don't call in. So let's do our sponsors. Let's get that out of the way because you know how it goes. It just gets all sloppy-doppy after a while and we forget. And all of a sudden we're so deep into the show that I want my sponsors to know that we are doing our job.
Roll it out.
We're paying the bills. And I think these guys from New Millennium, I want to get them on the show real soon. I was just talking with their boss, actually. We're going to organize. I have a real exciting show coming up probably in the next 2 weeks with guys from Dying Breed. And we're going to go over a little Skittles history because that's, one of those not that long ago, and it's already getting turned into 5 different. I told him the 3 different things that I had heard, and he was like, "Oh my God, this is going to be a good show." So that's coming up soon. So let's get back to New Millennium. That's what I was sort of segueing to at that one point. New Millennium Nutrients right here in Colorado. Super easy to use, but also great results. I'm on 3rd year using it now with mother approved. That's always a good thing. That's like pretty much what the standard. That's the standard I work under, the mother approved part.
Approved.
That Carbon Yar product they have, which is their carbo based product, is awesome. Very heavy on the aminos and doesn't just bulk them up as much as actually makes them happy to bulk up. Also, their fulvic acid product, which is their Ruby Full. That is the shit right there. If you want to just use a one standalone product and be like, okay, I think I could fuck with this line, that'll be the product I would check out. Also, Winter Frost is a good one if you're going to come finish up your thing. Everybody's looking for that final push, and that's a great product. You can go to newmillenniumnutrients.com if you want to check them out online. They got a store finder and a calculator. Figure out how much you need. Save some money. Don't waste your time thinking you know it all. Just punch it in.
It's so slick.
Tells you everything. You're like, oh, that's it? Cool. Now I didn't just buy 5 gallons of something I only going to need in 1. But if you just want to go straight to the point, you go to the guys from Incredibles, pick up some of the best edibles here in Colorado. Also available in Nevada, California now. It's moving on to Puerto Rico and also in Oregon now available officially. That's pretty awesome. But super high quality here in Colorado, all in-house inputs, which makes the difference, I'd say. And consistency is the key with their products, and they have a huge line. They just keep expanding every time they check them out online. They're like, oh man, they got more. So now they've got more CBD products. They've got wellness products, bath soaks, all sorts of. They've covered everything. They've covered literally every base that you could cover, except for flower, right? They haven't. One day they'll have they'll have their own license. But it would be just incredible flowers.
That would be cool.
That would be dope, right? After all this time, but no, they have taken it. Look at suppositories, dude. We got it. We literally have everything covered.
You got it covered.
We got
when you start rolling the suppositories.
Once you got suppositories on your agenda, you're like, okay, what do you need? And when they say suppositories, it's like, okay, you take care of that yourself. But but you can go to iloveincredibles.com. Check out their store finder. Also, they don't really have a calculator how much you need, but I'd say just go straight to the
Edibles 101 that tells you about like milligram dosages.
Oh, they do. Okay, so good. It's actually a super tight website. They got a lot of good information. So go to iloveincredibles.com to check that out, and hopefully we'll get them on the show soon and get to try some of these new things. I did try their cinnamon ones like first Friday. Those were dope. The cinnamons and the other ones, yeah, those were super dope. So next on our agenda, boom, Jeremy, a man who people are going to be contacting a lot in the next month or two. Is going to be a busy boy.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, Jeremy over buildasoil.com. He's killing it, getting people hard to find items and keeping everybody on the organic tip. And for beneficials, things like that, you can bugs. You can go get them directly shipped from him, and he's got free freight inside of Colorado. Is it New Mexico also too, or was it?
I think it's just Colorado.
Okay, Colorado for I think over $500, and you get free freight or something like that. Was the deal, or is it? Yeah, I think it was over 5. Right?
Oh, New Mexico! I just saw that. That was the first week I've seen that. Free freight in Colorado, New Mexico for all purchases over $500.
Bam! There you go. Yeah, I thought I saw. I was like looking, and I was like, "Wait a minute, New Mexico?" shit's getting crazy. That's a good deal there, because then that's when you can actually order soil and stuff. You'd be like, all right, I'll be taking a lot of soil. How's that? And you'd be like, God damn you, and you're
Free freight.
Free freight. Yeah, you got to watch out. But like, again, beneficials, things like that, those are the guys to go to. Yeah. You can go to 855-877-SOIL or buildasoil.com and check them out. And we've got Mr. Ron Wallace. Okay, Ron, I know I said I'm going to get your logo on the thing. We're going to definitely get your logo on the thing, but we're going to hype it up right now. Mr. Ron Wallace is a world's record pumpkin grower, and pretty much he's got record-like setting stuff on everything he touches. That's one of the things. This guy's one of those mycorrhizal fucking masters. So his mycorrhizal products are bar none the best, and he literally told me you got to hype that up. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what I'm doing every week. I'm saying mycorrhizals and the rhizosphere, because that's that guy's specialty. He's got the root web dialed in so well, and it's crazy how many crossover things, like they're just thinking about sprouting seeds. We're thinking about sprouting seeds. They're thinking about hitting them up with their phosphorus-based, flower food. We're doing the same thing, and it's the timing's all about the same, and our finishing times are about the same, and it's like the stresses. Just our rewards are a little bit different. They're going for gigantic. We're necessarily going for gigantic. We're going for best quality possible. That's the most important part.
You grow pumpkins like that, though. That's a pretty serious.
Oh, it's just like. It's literally beyond. I mean, obviously, you're not going for flavor at this point, and you're not thinking about food production as much as you're just going for the gusto. Like, that's it.
Going.
And the thing is, the amount of weight they put on at the peak times is it's phenomenal. It's like 45 to 60 pounds in a day. And you're just like, holy shit. Things just like. So yeah, we love it. It's fun. Actually, my friend Cam, who hooked me up with him, is putting together like a kind of a new Instagram page for them, just because everybody's all like they're the opposite of they take photos obviously, but they're not weed guys, so they're not like every day. And he's like, no, I'm putting together like the craziest collection of giant pumpkin things, because I'm sure it's kind of like when you look at the back of those packs back in the day, you'd be like, what? Same with that Sonic Bloom, same deal. When you saw the photos of the stuff, you're like, whoa, wait, that doesn't even make sense. I like it when it's like science fiction. That's always it's a good vibe.
Yeah. Looking at his website, you can see that.
Well, his pumpkin, or his tomatoes, 10-pounders. He's got 10-pound tomatoes. Wow. So.
And that pumpkin, for real. Every year.
It's over 2,000 pounds.
My little daughter does a pumpkin contest, and it's about weight, not size, right? So we're hitting up.
I'll get you some seeds of his. His are the shit.
We're gonna hit it up this year. We lost by, I think it was 1 pound.
And how big were you go?
And
800 pounds, 600 pounds.
Well, they weren't even that. They were like 100 pounds.
Oh wow! I'll get you the seeds from. I've got a few seeds from him, and I've got a few other seeds that actually I showed the pumpkin guys, and they were like, "Where did you get those?"
Yeah, we're not gonna lose next year.
I got some connections. We got connections.
We're gonna get some giant pumpkins and some of that product. And
he told me it gets up to $500 a seed sometimes.
I believe it. Yeah.
And I was like, damn, but like one guy. Like, that's the problem. It's not like lines up.
He's not.
So go to
WallaceWow.com.
There we go. See, I can never remember that. It's just too much. WallaceWow.com. It's too much.
Wow.
Too much. Too many W's. I'm like, wow.
Wallace?
Wow. Yeah. Is it Wow?
WallaceWow.com.
He got it. Red got it.
Boom.
You're hired.
He's hired.
Get you some of that.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think with Ron, it was ADS420 was this, or I think that was the code you want to use. I think so. I forgot to write it down. But I'm sure it'll work. If he sees that, he'll be like, it's close enough. Typical stoners. Can't even get their codes right. Speaking of which, I think that might even be the code for this thing, and I keep forgetting which was it ADS 420 for him too? Same code? I don't know. Is it? Yes? Yeah, we're calling it that. Go to seedsherenow.com for all your genetic inquiries, because he's got all the top American growers and a few. He's getting a couple of borderline international guys going on too. I think he's got Karma Genetics on the roster. But I'll go to their site, check out the specials. Also go to seedsaholics.com, which is their auction site, and that's charities, lost packs, all sorts of interesting deals. And again, this is that time of year everybody's starting to gear up. So get online, check out their stuff, and also money back guarantee on all the seeds. Replacement, I guess you should call it, because they want you to keep growing. They don't want you to just give up. Don't give up. Just get new seeds, because what's the problem with that? It's like that's one of those things when you have a problem with the seed, and ever since I've been selling seeds, it's always been a deal with, like, you're selling actually like living material, so it can go wrong. I mean, it's like goldfish, come home from the show, you leave it tied up.
Dead.
Hey, why is my goldfish dead? It's like, well,
you want another one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, get that covered.
You ain't getting your money back.
Yeah,
I guarantee you. You'd be like, no, I want
no money back for goldfish. You can have another one.
Exactly. What's the deal with living material? But yeah, you can get breeder specials from them and all sorts of, like I said, once again, just check out seedsofhall.com and check it out yourself. And if you're listening to the show and you want to call in and give us some more input, feel free to do so. It's James Bean, man on the scene. Sometimes he used to do 420. Oops, but he's been busy. He's been doing so many shows. He did Hawaii, and then he went straight to Seattle. And I'm sure he's just happy to not have to be on my show right now. And that's it, right? That is it. Bills have been paid, we think. Sort of, kind of. I don't know about that. Well, close enough. So we are here in the studio with, again, Red, old friend of mine. Let's just start with your passion in this industry because, again, we always cross paths in Amsterdam, which was always a place where everybody's cutting loose and going nuts. But it's when you got home after you left those trips, you pretty much have been in the garden for a good chunk of your life, I guess.
Yeah, a good chunk. Once I was old enough to realize what it was. It was
well, you're in a farming community. It sounds like if you're in Indiana, everything's farming there. Or no?
Yeah, really? And it was
everybody farms. Every single house is a farm.
Every single house is a farm.
It feels like
it's all corn and soybeans, and it's pretty ugly. But
what's it like growing up there, though? As far as like, I mean, does it seem like? I mean, because you'd think when I was like growing up in the East Coast in Rhode Island and stuff. I always thought of like, okay, anybody who's in Future Farmers, there's always like got to be like 10% of those guys just grow weed, right? That's why they're in there, because it's like you get all access to.
I don't know,
none of it.
The state kind of varies depending on where you're at. If you're up north or down south, and the southern half gets more hilly and there's more kinder people. There's a university. Mm-hmm. There's more conscious people eating better food, and so you get more of your herbal scene.
Right.
Around that versus being, I don't know. But so being in that, I was into growing vegetables and market gardening and doing organics and working with the soil. And things happened, of course, once waking up and learning the magic of the cannabis plant. It was just a given. I already knew how to do this and that and had that connection with plants as a plant person. And I have family background in commercial greenhouses, and so I knew flowers and plants, and so that helped.
Oh yeah,
it made it really a lot easier. But
but it was never a good state, like legal wise.
No, it was.
That was the problem. I mean, and also I would imagine because people always like, oh, Indiana, they can't have good weed. I'm like, well, they have people who actually understand plants better than most of these other guys who might be so-called good growers, but
and there's the thing that a lot of people don't know was the actual cannabis research they did at Indiana University.
That's
right?
true. That's true. That was in like the early 70s or mid.
I think it was more early 80s.
Oh, even that late. Okay.
Yeah, is what I recall, and that didn't build any cannabis culture, but people were in the know because of that, and that helped certain people be able to become breeders.
And so what kind of projects were those? Do you know any of the background on those studies?
Well, it was a lot of land-race variety trials and stuff like that. So things were being grown out that people nowadays have never seen, which is super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, there's a huge. I mean, that's actually good because the guy that I'm sending you down to go see, our buddy too, he's really now popping lots of land race because he got a bunch from a friend. Like, we both kind of got him from the same guy, but it was like that guy's collection was a lot of Middle Eastern, and because that's where he's from, but then African, and I think there's what I've noticed over the years is there was like not enough focus on African strains except for like Durban poison and things that everybody thinks of when they think of African, but there's so much interesting stuff there that I think wasn't utilized enough because everybody focused on Afghans, and then it became the same three. You know what I mean? Everybody's working off the same material.
Right.
So do you know what kind of land races they were focused? Was it more Asian or was it more African or?
Well, it was kind of the whole mix, like the mix
Nice.
is what my understanding was. Of course, I was young and was introduced to some of these people who knew these things, but I've got to read documents and stuff, and it was really interesting. Thai, there was Asian stuff in there for sure. And
so I think the most interesting thing for me, even though the whole problem with all those is the hermaphroditism, of course, but the Laotian strains were more interesting, and that's kind of where it all came from anyway. It was like the word Thai is a little bit misleading because there really isn't that much weed growing. As beautiful as it is, it's sort of like not the spot. You know what I mean? It's kind of like how I think when people think California and they're not from California, when they actually go to where all the cannabis part of California, it's like that's not the thing they were thinking. They're like, oh, this is different. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, but it's that if you go around the world and look at that climate, at that latitude, it's like, okay, now you're in Morocco, and now you're in these other places that are always like drier than you think,
right?
Because if it's too wet, it's just not going to work, And so the misnomer over the years is always, and that's why when you think of Thailand, you think of like jungles and shit. It's like that's not. So in your first thing, Thai weed, jungle, still no, it's more highland and it's more terrainy. You know, I mean, it's like a heavier terrain, and but the plants. The hermaphroditism was always the problem, so I grew a bunch out, and always was like, just didn't seem like something you'd want to work with. But when you smoke because that was actually my only. Growing up, I'd say I was on the cusp, because like when I was really conscious of where it came from was like 83 or something like that, or 84. You know what I mean? That's when I kind of like, that's Hawaiian. Okay, that's Hawaiian. So I'm starting to taste like, okay, those are interesting. And now I'm tasting, and I always knew what kind of like an Afghan was pretty much a hash thing, like how much Afghan hash there was back in those days was like ridiculous. There was a never-ending supply of the same exact hash, which was black, sliced perfectly, and everything about it was just commercially viable. You know what I mean? And it was like forever there. You could buy it at any trailer park in America. It was like there was one guy with a slab of hash that was like perfect.
Like the same. Yeah.
It was always that Afghan. So that was kind of like the base of understanding a little bit of that one comes from that part of there. So and that's why when you smoke really good hash, it's almost like sometimes you get that flashback of that particular smell where you're like, that's that.
Yeah,
that's the hash smell. Like that smells like, and it gets harder and harder to find now because now all the shit's all hybridized and you get like. It's like fruitier and got something, but occasionally, that little thing cuts through, which is, I feel like especially like pens and stuff, in 5 more years, it's gonna be a whole generation of people who don't even know that smell. You know what I mean? And it's like, so it's so funny when you're making hash and you're making all different types of stuff. Like bubble hash to me always pops that thing out. Like, it's there in the room. Like I smell it. You know what I mean? It's like fucking, the head turner. Like, what is that? So but a lot of those African strains, they're really like, they were never really utilized enough because a lot of those are really like THCV heavy, and now people don't. That's like one of the more elusive things to get. You know what I mean? Like terp wise, it's easier to find things, but that THCV kind of like naturally just happening. Mm-hmm. Have you got any strains? Have you been working with anything like crazy with those land races? Did you ever see anything pop up after the fact that kind of got out in the wild there, or was it kind of just all just info?
Well, yeah, things came out and people made hybrids, and I got to work with some interesting strains from Malawi and Swaziland.
That's perfect. Yeah, those are 2 good ones.
And
Chamba.
They were.
Did you ever hear that?
No.
The Malawi Chamba. Well, it actually just means good weed in Malawi.
Yeah,
that's like
and I didn't go there. I didn't acquire it, and it was a thing that came into my lap. And now I really, really enjoyed the Malawi a lot.
Did you get really wide buds like that? Like the really.
They were big,
and it's one of those like. Whoa! Like what's that?
It loved being outdoors.
Uh-huh.
It and it finished.
I think 2 just popped some Malawis too, so that'll be interesting. I think, but they're just starting. But it's one of those. That's one of those ones I always saw like large bud. Like, wow, that is fucking a big.
Yeah,
what's that?
It
know
was.
What I mean?
It was really. It had just a taste
but
and
a lot
flavor that was so you don't find that taste nowadays.
But very a little leafy, like a lot of small leaves, like that kind of vibe on the buds, like kind of exploding leaf bud is that's what I was getting when I was screwing them out.
Yeah, I don't remember that so much. I don't know how officially pure the strain was, but it was unique that no one that I ever knew ever had. I worked in the Swaziland stuff a lot as well too, and made a lot of different hybrids, and that one was not big and impressive.
No, it's kind of a yellowy color too. Did you get like the or not very like no hairs on it really? Or?
Well, this was very red.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was a very red-haired plant.
Okay, no, I got
small, little, tiny popcorn buds all down the.
Because it was a skunk hybrid, the only ones that I grew. Because remember they did a lot of Swazi crosses,
right?
And it produced darker leaf, but lighter. But it was kind of like a contrast going on, which was nice.
Yeah,
it was pretty stony though. I remember it being real stony.
It brought a whole different effect to the plants. I always worked with varieties that were not yielders. It was because we were breeding and being able to breed in different genetics to that. The hybrids were fantastic. The Swazi itself was pretty, whatever.
Right.
But it was bringing those genetics into that pool and being able to select out of that is what made some real winners.
And I'm sure you grew all like the Kerala skunk and all those kind of things back in the day when they had those.
Yeah, I had a lot of working with a lot of the background lineage that went into bubblegum, for example. Some of the G13, that was kind of an original thing, and some of those that spawned out of some breeding programs, Heavenly High, and some of these other ones that came out of G13 lineage. So there was kind of a broad spectrum. The original list covered the world as far as genetics, and some of that obviously had gotten out. And so we were kind of covering ground. So, working with some of the Asian varieties in there as well. But like I said, a lot of this stuff, it grew, 14 feet tall indoors.
I was going to say about 14 feet. You're like, okay.
You're bending it over inside to make it to work. And
also lighting qualities maybe weren't so. I mean, right now you could get away with double-ended at, sitting up at 15 feet already, or even higher. And still putting enough light out. Room's already, you got a big room humming. So it's like, okay, now we can actually. And then the funny part is nobody does that. You know what I mean? Like everybody wants to fucking utilize their space as much as possible. But, some of the most interesting rooms I've seen back in the day was in Amsterdam. There was a woman that used to grow for Neville. I don't know if you ever ran into her. Wendy, Crazy Wendy, back in the day.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know if you ever saw her room when you were there, but
no.
It was literally 12 footers in this place.
Okay, yeah.
Open bulbs. It was just like, it was weird, and it was all hidden, which is nice, because it's like one of those places where she was always proud to bring you by, and you get upstairs, and you look around, and you'd be like, what the fuck is this room? And then all of a sudden, it's like, boom, open the door, there you go. You'd see it. Oh, we got a call in. Who we got? It's magic. Welcome to the Adam Dunn Show. Who we got?
What's up, man? My name's Alex. I am just calling to talk about some Malawi shit.
Oh, nice. Great. Add what you can.
Excuse me?
Yes, sounds good. I said add to the conversation what you can. You got some experience in Malawis?
Yeah. A buddy of mine made some crosses with a Malawi triploid male that he had found, and we were running a bunch of them. It was it's a really interesting plant. I'm not sure where he had got them from. It could have been Afro Pips or something. I can't really remember.
Right.
But
and it was a triploid, you said. So, and did it carry through? I mean, you guys used it. You guys just grew it out as a clone and kind of always carried that characteristic, or did you guys actually breed it into something? It's a really hard thing to.
No. So we had seeds of it, and we found a little triploid male, and we
used the male, nice
on a bunch. Yeah, and we used it on a bunch of stuff. think like Purple Diesel, Girl Scout Cookie Forum. We used it on the Chem 4. I don't remember. This was like 10, 12 years ago.
Right. And did you also get big yielders? Was it a big yielder too, like we were talking about, or?
Oh yeah, it was huge. Big old long colas. It had kind of carrot. It kind of had like a carrot nose to it. It was really weird. We never tested it, but
right.
I've heard a lot that the Malawi's test high in THCV, which it had a very psychedelic kind of high. It flowered. Most of the F2s we had made with it, they would go really long. They didn't like being inside, obviously being in land race or heirloom strain, but they would go like 13 weeks, at least, and that's kind of, and that was in the F2s that we had kind of bred to try and find shorter flowering plants with,
Yeah, it's hard to get. I mean, it's really hard. It's just hard with those long flowering ones. First of all, it's hard to keep a mom around because a lot of those plants, tend to be like nightmares because they're getting so big, and they're as you're cutting them back, they're not really happy. You know what I mean? It starts to stress them out and stuff. So they're kind of a bitch in that way. And then like when you go past 11 weeks, I think everybody's just like it's so hard to get anybody who doesn't appreciate what they're doing unless they're getting paid more or something, because they're just like, nobody. Exactly. And now everybody doesn't give a fuck. They're just like, they'll pay you straight across the board, whatever. And you're like, no, this actually takes like twice as long as something else. Someone's got to get paid. And that's kind of where a lot of these strains unfortunately get lost in the long run because of the fact that it's just not viable in today's market. And I hope that more people just take the time to.
I mean, if you're a hobbyist, it's one thing, but to grow commercially, it just really doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but it does if you have the right facility. I mean, in a way, because if some places now would understand their market better, they'd be like, well, you will find guys and girls out there who understand good weed and understand, like, we'll pay a little bit more because we always have. That's been, pretty much the way. You can always get cheaper weed. That's not impossible. Slide on over. We got Annie in the house.
You want me to climb over here?
Yeah, climb. Make it dramatic. Oh, yeah. Annie Reekin in the house. Yes.
What up?
Who dat?
So you got your headphones here, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, we got a caller on right now talking about Malawi weed. You ever smoke any Malawi? I'm sure you did.
I'm sure I did in the day.
Can't remember. That's always a good sign. So what are you growing now? Are you growing at this point, or this is something you did in the past, or?
No, I'm not growing anymore. I think I still have some seeds in the stash of it, unfortunately. I am growing an African landrace, some Durban Punch from Tropical Seeds. They're out of the Canary Islands. They kind of do a lot of work with a lot of African stuff.
Right.
It's
I've heard of them.
definitely going to be one of the longer flowering things in the room right now. I'm at like week 8 on Wednesday, and none of the calyxes have started swelling yet, except for ones that I had selectively pollinated.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's just a big old cola full of pistils. But it's interesting. It really doesn't smell like. I also have the Colorado Durban cut, but
that's such a
Durban smell that I'm used to.
Yeah, the Colorado one.
Kind of a peachy smell too.
Yeah, the Colorado one is really off base when it comes to like a real Durban. Just should have like an anisey background to it. Like you should be like, holy shit, that smells like licorice, like straight up licorice. And then you're like, okay, that's probably a Durban, right? As close as to the original because that's how I've always. The expression on every Durban. And the problem is if you grow Durban in, like, say, in Holland outdoors, it's never going to have as much oomph to it as if you either grow it indoors or in equatorial sort of situation. But with the one here, it's like, wait a minute, this smells nothing like. I don't get any of that. I smell Jack. something. You know what I mean? With that
yeah, it is really Jacky. It's got that weird kind of spicy smell to it, and that must be the skunk or all those things that they've got going on in Europe.
Well, it's even worse. I think is what it is. Well, not worse, but I think what the reality is, it's like paint where you just overworked something, and when you put too many combinations in it, because Jack Herer is an 11-way hybrid, like literally an 11-way hybrid. So when Ben drew it out for us, it was like, okay, that's a fucking dog's breakfast and a half, like you're always explaining. But it was like a 11-way hybrid. So you're like, okay, I think once you get beyond a certain amount of crosses, it kind of just turns brown at that point, and that brown flavor is that fucking Jack flavor. And it's like that's where if you're not a big smoker, you smoke it once and you go, wow, that's really hazy and nice, and then you're like, no, it's not a haze, dude. Haze is very distinctive. You know what I mean? And it's like that's just a mix that's spicy, and so you could.
Yeah, it's almost peppery, the Jack.
Yeah, and it's too bad because it's like when it first came, like when that flavor was first hit, it was real special in a weird way. But now I see like so many different things, and you're like, it's just turning into a category. You know what I mean? It's like that's that category. So yeah, I like how it grows, the Colorado cut, but it's just so not Durban that it's always like. Anybody who grew it, I'd be like, first of all, it's an indica. Like, look at it. It grows like a beast. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's done in like 9 weeks.
Exactly, and it grows good yield.
Not at all.
And it doesn't have any of those other characters. Like again, it's a good cut, but it sounds like you got a long wait ahead of you on that particular plant. But from the 8th week on is actually kind of fun. This is where you really got to log in and sort of like. You won't see much happen, and then all of a sudden, fucking overnight, some crazy shit happens. That's what's interesting about those long sativas is that they kind of have like a double or a triple. Like if you didn't know, you might harvest it time. Like maybe it's ready, and you're like no, and then all of a sudden a whole new thing comes off the top of it or something. You know what I mean? So those are the things that can screw you up.
I've been kind of worried about feeding her, just because it being a landrace strain. I thought it would deal with the soil that I had mixed and feed off of it. But, at 8 weeks, like I said, a lot of leaves are already fading and falling off, even on the cola. I may have to hit it with something, which I found weird. I thought land races usually have, don't need much food at all. Yeah, but I guess this isn't the case. Maybe it's bred in rich soil or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of times you're chasing the fence. It seems like just because you don't know what they need, and so they're in a weird environment. Like, hey, this is the richest soil I've ever been in, and it might not necessarily translate to like faster growth. It might actually take longer for it to figure it out. Because I've had the same where you're just like doesn't seem like you're giving it the best you can give it, and then you're almost like maybe that's the problem. You know what I mean? Maybe it's so used to being just dirt poor and like not working, not having anything to work with. It's like, holy shit, I got a smorgasbord. So that maybe plants aren't expressing those original things that they did,
Well, yeah, and it's weird, I was expecting that any kind of licoricey flavor that you described that's, well known with the Durban, but I'm getting peach. I know, I was talking to the guys at Tropical Seeds that had bred it. I think they crossed it like a Transky or something like that. So maybe that's where that's coming from.
That's a pretty small plant, Transky too. It's not. It's like more pyramid shaped, kind of like almost. Transky is like if it's an original one, they grow it literally a lot like a train wreck. You know how a train wreck grows like that pyramid shape, a little wide on the bottom, and just kind of silver. It's like that. That's kind of the original, and it's an interesting plant on its own. That's the thing with the African strains is like they tend to be like the best and the worst all within maybe a mile of each other. Like especially like the Nigerian black is one of the strongest plants out on the planet. Just on its own, it can be like in the 20s and higher, high 20s just in nature, but it doesn't yield shit. And it's.
Are you talking about like JJ's?
No, I'm talking about in the wild. I'm talking about like Nigerian black, like in the wild.
Okay.
Now, his is like his is a Nigerian base, and it has the dark colors too. But in the wild, it's like one of the higher THC strains found, like one of the highest ones, and it gets a real weird, creepy high, like you get with a lot of extreme hazes and things like that. So it's got that like racy, strange high, but within a mile of that, you could find like 10,000 other plants that all suck. You know what I mean? So it's really like you have to really, otherwise you're going to get fucked. You know what I mean? You go there, oh yeah, I'll take it all. And they're like, one bud out of the whole thing is actually like that. The rest of them look black and have the same vibe, but
Not the same
nothing.
ball.
Yeah. So it's it's kind of like
that racy kind of psychedelic high on the Nigerian. I know back to the Malawi. I know the Malawi stuff high in THCV. Is that true also for the Nigerian?
I think a lot of the African strains in general just seem to have a lot of THCV traits in them, and that is like the if you want to kind of like describe it, it would be like the flash part of the high. Like if you smoke outdoor weed compared to indoor weed kind of isn't quite as like bright in a sense. Like, and if you have like outdoor weed and you get that but the outdoor weed doesn't last as long, and then the indoor weed seems to be like more like creeper, come up harder at the end. But with outdoor weed, you kind of get that instant, really like happy high, which you don't get sometimes with indoor weed. Like a lot of like the missing element is that THCV, and that's because it's mostly created in sunlight conditions, and so some plants can make it, and a lot of plants can't. You know, and the much that they can, it's a tiny bit. But then you'll find an anomaly here and there, and then those are the ones that get everybody really high, but maybe don't have a high THC. You know, they're just like, they're like 8%, but it has a lot of THCV, and it's like, I'd rather have that almost. So so keep your eyes out. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks, man. Well, dude, I appreciate you having me on, dude.
Sure.
I'll be listening.
All right, man. Thank you. Peace. So Annie,
Yes.
get close to the mic here. Come on, don't think we're
Cuddle right up.
You're not lounging around here. This is work.
Oh,
look at him. He's tired. Look, he's tired. So, do you guys even remember each other?
No.
No?
I remember you.
Yeah,
I remember you as one of those faces at that time when I couldn't pay attention to anything.
Yeah, and I was just in the background.
And here we are on the couch together, all hanging out.
I have been to your house.
See, there you go. Boom.
See?
But it's been a long time ago. And
Did I cook?
No.
Did Rob pack the bong endlessly?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the story.
Was there matches involved?
Many matches.
Was there
You weren't the guy who sat there and watched Rob all night and went, well, man, how many hits is that? Rob went, oh, we don't count around here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That wasn't you.
So
I was not counting.
When we were doing he just rolled in. It was just magic, and so we were like, "Hey, perfect," because Annie's supposed to come on, but now that you're here, since
nobody told me I had to be on time.
Nah, exactly. Not on my show. That would be the craziest idea ever.
That's kind of what I thought.
In my introduction, because I assumed you were going to show up, I said, "Okay, let's break it down." We did the cup in '93, and it was small and fun, but then it became something real. And then somebody else did it in between us, right? A couple people, right?
No, I think what happened, 94 was the first year I wrote the coffee shop reviews.
Okay, so that was right after us.
That guy, Todd, that worked for Arion, was supposed to write them, but he got into grad school here in Denver.
Really?
Yeah, and
said
I
later.
was the only literate person he could think of, and so I got the job interviewing all the coffee shops.
So we did the first guidebook and almost got in trouble for doing it because we said the Cannabis Cup. Then you got hired by them to do the actual thing. I think you even copy-pasted in some of our good stuff because it was so tight. We did a good job for it. We paved the road. We paved the road for you. You literally walked there. We're like, I'm taking over. Those guys suck. Let me show you.
Nobody told me you sucked.
No, I'm just kidding. You walked in. You were like, man. But did you feel the same problems that we? Because when we did it, we got a lot of blowback. I mean, we got blowback, and then you already had the
blowback from the coffee shops.
From the owners, yeah. They didn't want. At first, we had to like work hard. Like we thought it was going to be easy. It was like, oh, high times. Everyone loves high times, and then we found out real quick that was. I
found out that they hated them, but they really wanted to do it.
Yeah, you got the hype part, so you were lucky. You got it when it turned. Yeah, it started going up like because 90. So how many years did you end up doing it?
94, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
6 years. That's a long time.
I know, too long.
That is a long time. So. In Cannabis Cup years, 6 years is like what 60 years or something. Is that
like dog years? Yeah, I don't know.
It's like that because I mean now we used to be 1 cup a year, and that was the thing that was interesting about the Cannabis Cup is it was 1 cup a year in Amsterdam. You had to get there. was a lot of missions involved. And then nowadays it's like 1 cup a month. Right?
Oh, there's cups everywhere.
I mean, even cannabis cups from them are like bi-monthly pretty much it came down to, like a bi-monthly one just from them. And then you got all these other magazines and you got all these other groups and cups and things and stupid people like me doing my own cups, you know, dumb shit like that. But it was inevitable because when you do it, you realize like it's not, and that's the thing is that if you're doing it for the money, it's not going to last very long because really what will separate you from the herd is the true love of the cannabis plant, and that is not going to make any money because that's the problem. Everybody goes.
We've proved that year after year.
Yes, and
loving the cannabis plant don't make you no money.
It's crazy. The more you love it, the harder it is to make money, and this is a known fact. If you hate on it, you'll probably make tons of money. That's the guys, and it's just, when you think of it as a widget, is when you're like, hey, we're past that point. Now we can't. I don't. It's been my problem since the beginning. Like. Selling weed when I was a kid, even then I was like, I can't get rid of that. You know, I was like, right. Oh well, you know, I guess that's, you know, and that just turns into the end of your downfall at that point.
It starts. That's when it starts.
Exactly.
Here we are.
So all those years, 6 years, and what was the maximum amount? It was about 3,000 people in the end.
I don't think it was ever that many.
I think that was the most they ever had.
Maybe. I don't know.
You don't think so?
I don't know. I never. Yeah. Why would they tell me how many tickets they sold?
True. Well, here it was 20,000 people.
Well, how many people went to the Emerald Cup?
About 20,000 people. But here it was still high times. It was 20,000. That was probably their peak.
Oh, was that the one I came to a few years ago?
No, I don't think so. It was 2012 or something like that. It was the 13. It was probably the 14, 13, 14. Those were like when it was like Denver was hopping.
No, that was when I was here, and it was right on April 20th.
Oh my God, you saw it?
I saw it.
You saw it. So anyway, it was a monster, right? And that was the thing is we were there for a whole year preparing every year. Like the day they left, it was like get 1 week of break, and then I mean you pretty much
start talking to people about it again.
Exactly.
When's it going to be next year?
And you had
that sucked. When's it going to be next year so I can be in it again?
Exactly. Well, I mean, the other thing too is like the fallout. I mean, it was kind of good because, for instance, I was super happy that you were involved because otherwise, you know, it was because we did have there was a moment in time. What happened with remember what's his name, the little guy with the bald dude? What was his name? He used to work over at the for us in the gray area and stuff, and then he took over for a little while, and it got real sloppy.
Oh, God.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I can't say his name.
You can't say it, or you can't.
I just can't say it. It won't come to my mind.
I was gonna say I can't either because it's weird. I'll remember it. I'm gonna blurt it out somewhere during the show. That's his name. But anyway, was that after you, or what was the deal with that?
I think that was after.
Yeah, and then it just went right back down to just miscommunication because that was the whole thing. It was like the cup was. We had all this passion behind it because we had organized it that one year, and we just wanted it to do good. Then it was like, yeah, Annie's involved. Things are going to be great. And it started to go really good.
Oh, man, we had the PAX Party House full of hemp products and stuff.
Get closer to the mic. There you go.
PAX Party House?
Oh, my God.
Full of hemp products?
The PAX was ridiculous. And it was funny because to this day when someone says to me the PAX Party House, it's like, okay, you were there in those literally like kind of crazy years where, yeah, it was so tight. But it was still cool. It was right next to a police station. That was the funniest part of it all.
That was a good part.
I mean, literally, the building was the police station, and this is the PAX Party House, and this is the police station, and it just was like mind-boggling for everybody who was coming. And the cool part is that in those years, everybody who came back. And then at a certain point, it stopped being that. It started just to be a new group every year because there wasn't like enough satisfaction from the year and there wasn't enough personability. That's what I feel. Because during the PAX days, you had to like, you know, we were like literally.
Right. Well, then it got more spread out all over town too.
Well, yeah, but also just in general, in my opinion, it was like there wasn't the feeling that you feel like you did it, you done it, and it wasn't like you had to do it again. Whereas those years, it was like. I mean, once that guy, remember the farmer guy that would come every year with the freaking overalls that was like with his daughter, and he was there every single year, and he was the first guy, and he'd roll into the shop, and I'd be like, oh shit, it's on. Like,
it's on. Well,
And, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. Do you remember the guy, and I can't remember his name either, but he was from down south Atlanta. He was a politician down there, and he would come every year, and he would run like
in the white hemp suit? Not Gatewood Galbraith.
No. He wasn't a politician like that. Like that's what he just.
But he was just a politician.
He was like a local guy, but he was really good at organizing. And he would always wear like all the he was the pre-laminate guy before all the laminate guys wore all the laminates. Like he would come because he was there like every year. And he was a small guy, a little short dude, and he would just like get on the mic and do a lot of the stuff because he knew nobody. It was just like classic, bunch of stoners, you know.
Right, nobody taking charge.
No one's taking charge. And he was that guy, like, hey,
that guy.
Yeah.
You know, he was
the whole.
Exactly.
Right, everybody from High Times was off getting high, and he was making their party happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And anyway, but like there was just certain elements of the cups that were like pretty awesome because it was still hokey dokey. And that was
fun.
Cool. That was the good part of it. And it's weird to see how big it's gotten. And then all of a sudden it's gotten, commercialized and stupid in the sense as far as like nobody even cares like who won. It's good for your packaging on your legal product that you can sell now.
Right,
but back in the day, it was like even when you won, there was really the benefit was that your shop would be super popular if you were selling it out of shop. And we were always in the kind of the weird category where we couldn't really benefit off of it except for seed sales, but then seed sales weren't like now when people actually feel they can legally grow. So it was like, seeds were always like one of those things you think you're going to go, oh man, we're going to sell so many. And then it's like, out of 1,000, even if 3,000 people came, let's say 3,000 the most that ever came, which we don't even know if they're all from America, but let's say even if 3,000 potential seed guys came, maybe like 50 would buy it. You know what I mean? The rest were like scared or, what are we going to do with it? And it was just hardly, so people, a lot of us didn't benefit as hard as people thought they did. Like, oh, you guys.
But I don't think people, but didn't you benefit through the year from having prizes?
Kinda.
Because people came all year. A lot of people were
we were lucky
I'm not
we had
going then. I'm not going during the cup.
It kind of, but to the point where I was always like way more anticipating like the big, it's going to be crazy on those, even those years when we won. We had a few decent like runs or whatever, but for the most part, seeds are always been like very exclusive as far as the amount of still to this day. I mean, you can for every 10 pounds of weed, you sell one pack of seeds. You know what I mean? Like in reality, when you actually balanced it out, because but nowadays it's actually turning into a whole new baseball card mentality hype where you're like because of Instagram. Instagram's turned it into a whole new world where you're like, oh, you don't really have to be a grower. You just have to be a collector that you're probably going to sell. A lot of people are selling them, flipping them, getting the last packs of whatever some guys got and then waiting for them to go up in value and then trying to flip. You know what I mean? It's like, it is kind of like glass was like that 2 years ago, and now glass is kind of pooped out too. You know what I mean? Things go in these little waves, and now it seems like it's Bitcoins and seeds. Those are the two collectibles. Well, it's good for us seed guys, I guess. You get a little boost in the economy, but
you need to do really limited run seed packaging.
Yeah, you have
so that people are collecting the packaging,
and then they don't even care. They really don't care at that.
And they really don't care what seeds are in it. It could be anything.
Well, it's like sneaker. It's like sneaker guy. Well, we don't want to do that, but it's like sneaker guys who don't really wear their sneakers. They just buy them and stack them up. And you're like, I just wear my sneakers till they fall off. Same with my strains. Same with what I smoke too. I'll smoke what I smoke, and then I'll move on to something new, and I'll probably focus on that a lot. And but then you always have your little stand. Your one you go back to. But anyway, so back in the day with all that stuff, did you see this whole industry growing the way it has grown? Because I know you've been back for the whole time that this is a really. When did you move back? 2000?
2002.
So it was already legal and legal-ish, in a lot of places. You're in the East Coast, right?
I'm on the East Coast. I'm in New Hampshire, where there's a very small medical program, and states around us are talking about adult use, recreational. Mm-hmm. But what did I think? I don't think I ever saw it being quite like this. I just was in California starting from January 1st, checking out dispensaries. This is another thing we got to work on, Adam. There's liquor stores, right? You want to go buy something to drink, you go to the liquor store. Mm-hmm. You don't go to the dispensary anymore. You don't go to the pot shop. Is it the cannabis shop? Is it the... What we need a generic term for marijuana stores, cannabis stores.
I mean, it's hard because it's gonna be stuck as a dispense, just like coffee shops are all coffee shops, even though like gray area never had good coffee, no one ever drank it, right? That was I told you that was the whole theory behind that one. It was like, if we make the worst coffee in the world, then no one will drink it, and we'll never have to clean up. Now that's basically it's the gray area philosophy. And I'm sure if anybody's been there, they know the coffee blows. It's really bad.
It was always how dirty the outside of the cup was that bothered me. Like they just rinsed out the inside.
Oh my God! In Amsterdam, that never happened. No, they do that.
Okay, dishwashing was very casual in Amsterdam. I will agree with that.
Whenever they do the like, I'd watch them do the fucking beer things, and they just like soak, and all be all soapy, and then they just put them over the thing and let it drain. I'd be like, you didn't even rinse them; you just let that shit just come down. It's like, oh. So yeah,
that's what makes the beer taste the way it does.
It gives you the shits, is what it does. That's what it really does. So,
did I ever see it getting this big? I guess I hoped so, but I guess I thought it might be a little different.
It's a little bit like Trump. We all thought it would be kind of funny to happen, and then when it happens, we're like, this is actually not really good because now the prices have plummeted, and all my friends are like hating it. It's really weird. Like we all went through like the quick highs, and now we're already into the lows and the mids and the fucking, it's like, what did we do? It's $800 a pound and it's fucking dropping like a rock and people are
losing their income all over the place. Exactly. No, yeah, we were talking about this.
Yeah,
10 years ago, you could go 5 pounds and still go away for the winter.
Yeah, and it's like this is these days are coming to an end. Yeah, it's huge, and it's not like the workload is less. Our rents are higher, input costs are more, competition's fierce. And so, yeah, you almost have to like give up on the idea of doing it unless you're going to do it big. And then, but then the worst part is if you're in that middle ground where you actually smoke a lot of weed, then you kind of have to grow your own because it's too fucking expensive. I mean, the taxes are
it's crazy,
nightmarish, and you don't. Why would you want to pay it anyway? Because it's like who you know.
And you don't know anything about it. I went to a bunch of places in California, and supposedly legalization was going to bring us uniform products, informed staff to help you buy things. They're still talking about indica and sativa, no broadleaf. Anyhow, and
they're not even up to broadleaf.
And no narrowleaf drug, broadleaf drug. I'm just going biting my tongue. The ladies, they're patting me on the arm, going, "Well, the difference between hash and shatter is that hash has some plant material left in it, dear," was when they called me dear.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
But they don't know, the kids don't know nothing about the products. I was in Nevada. They have clearly posted you can buy, an ounce of weed, so many grams of edibles, and 1/8 of an ounce of hash in a day. And I said to the kid, well, how does that work? How did they decide the amount? Did they say that in 1/8 of an ounce of a concentrate, there's going to be this much THC and there's that much in an ounce, so you're only buying the same amount? And he just looks at me and goes, it's the milligrams.
It's like Idiocracy where they're just like, it's electrolytes.
I was there in California a couple of weeks ago, and it was really interesting. I was checking out the products and the same kind of experience, where the young gentleman was explaining to me in great detail how hemp and marijuana were actually different plants and different species, and it wasn't cannabis. And
you're like,
and then actually went into some pretty good, and I had to bite my tongue.
Was he a flat earther at the same time, or what?
No, he was so into what he was doing that he was trying to, And I was checking out the CBD category, and it was empty. And the guy tells me, it's empty because it's selling. People are wanting it. There's only this one thing in here, and we don't buy hemp CBD. We don't buy that shit from Colorado because it's a scavenger. It pulls all the heavy metals, and it's not. We only take CBD from medical marijuana. And then he got into this whole thing about this hemp and marijuana, and we're different plants. And I just had to thank him for his time and check out the other selections. But it was to your point of knowledgeable tenders. They think they know it. They probably read it somewhere or something.
Well, they got a 2-week course.
Oh, they're okay.
I went into one place to buy something to, can I say this? Send back to a friend in Amsterdam, which I find highly amusing that things need to go from California. But, she wanted one of these CBD vape pens, really high test looking, kind of looks like a tampon, slick lady stuff.
Hey,
and
whoa, tampons. I don't know if we can talk about that on this show. It's a guy show for guys. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
You think any ladies? You think any ladies are listening? No, we hope at least a few.
Watch it, bud.
We do. We have a. Don't watch it, bud. Oh my God! Am I getting Harvey Weinstein on my own show?
Yeah.
I'm getting Harvey Weinstein over here.
Anyhow,
no,
when I went into this
place, we hope we have plenty.
The company that made this line of things had the company rep in the dispensary. The company rep, like the guy that gets sent out to pour shots of Cuervo at the ski slope and stuff. The company rep informing me about the products. 55, he's been in cannabis for 2 or 3 months as a profession. He's out there, and he learned about medical cannabis from his mother and his older sister.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Nice.
And he's repping the product.
And he's 55.
Yeah.
Great time to start repping.
Two months in.
Yeah, 2 months in at 55. Like, no, yeah, it's not the guy you wanted to be telling you. But no, it's funny too because like you were saying earlier. So somebody in California is like, it's not that Colorado hemp. And then people in Colorado are like, it's not that Chinese hemp. So it's like, it's always somebody, it's the other hemp's bad hemp, bad. It's bad from somewhere else. But even like China hemp, like they're about to step their game up on proper isolate that's actually, got the same exact qualities as anything you can get here, but a third of the price, which is exactly what they know how everybody operates because most of the people that are working with isolate right now, which that's like the thing that everybody wants to talk about and wants to try to sell and wants to try to sell you, especially at these, like once you get into these pharmaceutical companies that are getting involved or even like food additive, people start to put it into like it's now people are just clocking on stuff. Oh yeah, it's going to go into dog food, it's going to go into granola, it's going to go into this, it's going to go into that. And it's great, but it doesn't really work. Like isolate's not the best. It's like, again, you're back to that whole single molecule mentality of like, well, this doesn't even work. But they don't give a fuck. So then, but they do.
It's like about 10 years ago, they put echinacea in chicken soup cans.
Did they?
Yeah. It was like a thing for a couple of years.
In soup cans or in?
Canned soup.
Oh, okay.
When you bought canned soup, you could buy chicken noodle soup with echinacea.
That's weird. Oh, because they just thought of it was like double.
Like everybody was taking echinacea.
So you just skip the fucking do that.
Put that in your soup when you're sick.
Yeah.
See, and you get the echinacea effect.
Echinacea. But is that? Yeah. Well, there you go. Saving some time and energy. But I feel like it's it's nice. It'd be great to see like cereal aisles fortified with CBD more than sugar, right? Sprinkle it on there, but I don't think it's going to work as well as it would be full plant or whole plants. That kind of it's like it's always the double edge. But at the same time, people don't if they don't care that it doesn't work, then they probably don't care if they get it from China too. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's going to be the next push where everyone's like, oh well, fuck it doesn't work anyway. Get it from China, throw it in there. It's like instead of actually using it the right way,
right?
Because they put it in vodka in fucking Europe. I'm like, okay, that's not really the spot that I'm thinking about it. But I guess CBD vodka. I mean, it's in Poland, of course. It's like what else they got? Like what else?
It helps recover from hangover.
It's straight,
cushions your brain against the hangover.
That's.
I mean, it can't hurt, I guess, at that point. But yeah, there's definitely some crazy ways of sort of viewing it as like. Because you can't claim health claims at this point, technically, like just like anything, you can't say this does this. But I saw on TV the other day, which was nuts. Here in Colorado, it was looked like it was a national thing that was probably in every legal state. It was California Cream, I think it was called, or.
Oh yeah, you were talking.
And it was like, it's like the middle of the night, and all of a sudden I'm watching it, and I'm like, holy shit, this is for CBD cream, and it's like, hey, infomercial, and they show like a picture of a body, and it's like. There, here, and it's like not claiming it, but kind of claiming it, pretty much.
Use it here.
Yeah, it says for pain here. So it's like okay, pretty much your entire body because it just showed your head, your arm, your leg, and your So it's like okay, pretty much you have pain anywhere, then you need to rub this cream on yourself. And then it was $19.95, buy one get one free, full on infomercial where it was one of those deals where it was like the tagline from Jersey. It was like, not a fucking medical state at all. It was like, P.O. Box, blah, 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 Jersey. You're like, oh, yeah, this is some fucking guy just pumping it out. But we're at that level now. I mean, it's like, it's infomercials.
Right before I left in December, I found at the checkout counter of the convenience store where they have the energy package and stuff, something with CBD in it. Like a calming thing with, I don't know, some Chinese herbs and CBD. But it's a convenience store in nowhere, New Hampshire.
Right. No, it's pretty cool. I mean, it is like it's crazy that they're talking about cracking down on it. Like like they already rated.
But that thing in Tennessee where they rated,
they rated like 70 plus shops, and you saw that one cop that came out. Did you see that video?
I did not see that video.
Heard about it. It was pretty good. It was like this cop comes out, they're like, and then the reporter was really on point. She's like, so what do you think they're using it for? And he's like, they're using it to get high. And she's like, no, they're not actually. They're using it for pain, and they're using it for, she gave him like a fucking schooling, and he's all, well, yeah, if you, and then yeah, well, if you, like, it's not like you can go down to the Pick and Wick and buy it. She's like, you can buy it at Walmart. And then he's like, well, then we'll just have to look into that. And you're like, oh my God. Like,
it's really kind of sad that there's local communities like that. There's stores, and Barney Fife comes in and
it was
lack
a
of education.
Yeah,
it was a 100% Barney Fife. It was like the literal, like, oh my God, this guy is the epitome of
stereotypical Southern sheriff.
Of just ignorant guy that's talking out his ass right now. And especially because, they went in like hard, smashing up places. And,
it's
like
crazy.
I remember in Amsterdam they did the same thing with, they came in and were all freaking out about our hemp oil. Because people were saying hash oil, and it was like, they came in, no, we got hash oil. And I remember they came, I was like, what? And I was like, no, we don't have any hash oil. And it was just like, and then they went into the fridge and they got it all out, and we were just like, are you guys kidding? It obviously didn't go anywhere, and they were like scratching it. And it was like, nobody is smoking that shit. Just stop. You know what I mean? But the confusion between hemp, I think it's like, to this day, there's so much confusion with the wording, like with hemp oil, hash oil, like RSO, like all the different. We have so many kinds. We've turned it into like a rainbow of.
What kind of oil is that again? Get the right bottle. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
But you notice anything when it has anything for real in it, it works. You know what I mean? That's the key. It's like that's the silver bullet, right? So it's like
when you were talking earlier, the single molecule theory, right? And that will help certain people, but it's all about the full plant. I mean, in my opinion. So,
yeah, it's interesting because I had a guest on who's a friend of mine, and he's developed a pretty simple. He's patented, and it's like basically he patented the most simple thing ever, which is grinding up fucking wheat and mixing with coconut oil and just what's the simple synthesis of like. And you're like, when you do it, the hardest part is, of course, getting the oil into capsules without it turning into a giant mess. And that was like how it always came to me. And I was always like, dude, it can't be like this. It works good, because it works really good. Like literally 10 times more powerful than if you were to try to do it with like the same amount of oil. Because the oil is always like, to me, it's like, that's like you already fucked it up. You know what I mean? When it comes to medicine. Because once you put it into solvent of some sort, you're kind of like get down to like a piece of a pie compared to like the whole thing. And you've lost something along the way, and that's like the most important part. It seems like every time, whereas like.
But you're saying the coconut oil as a medium to extract is.
Just a tiny bit of coconut oil and mix it with some flour or break up some bud. And then that's what it's funny because now Matt doesn't smoke anymore, and that's all he does. That's how he does his every morning, and it's just like literally super active because it's like you can warm it up first. It's always obviously going to activate even better, but then put the coconut oil. So you kind of like heat it up a little bit, put a little coconut oil in. It's just like that. When you're not smoking, it'll fucking last all day compared to like same amount of weed you've spoken, you'd be like whatever.
Right.
But you're like, whoa, shit, that's fucking bam. So it's just like delivery. So that's like that's a non thing, but it's like it's not in the actual original plant material, let's say. But that little tiny thing helps. And imagine when you now strip it out further, you get even less. So it's like you got it in cornflakes and you got nothing. So you're now, over the years, getting kind of more involved in growing or being around, because you're being around more hemp projects and things, because that's kind of, to me, I always think the future of everything. Like, the perfect plant would be like a 15-foot, at the top, get you super high, and then the fibers.
And then the fibers are right.
Yeah, because you always want the old, that's pretty much what we're always thinking. And it's just getting over that hump of them freaking out about things over points. I mean, if they even went to 1%, I'd be stoked, because there's so many things.
One gives you a way more.
There's a huge playing field, you know what I mean? Then all of a sudden you got flavors and stuff that aren't, it's not like you're pigeonholed with these, like, these all suck anyway, no wonder. But you have more cannabinoids to play with, and you just ride that, like, even if it was 0.9, I'd say we'd be so much better off. We'd have,
right, like, keep it under 1.
Yeah, just to be cool. We're cool. We're cool with that. Like, I'll take a point.
Up to
literally that'd be like the perfect amount, because
1/10 of a point every time that.
Well, there's just like so many more things out there that I've been like, wow, that would have been so 0.6, 0.64, 0.7. You know, those are like
7.5.
And that seems to be the area where you're like, oh, these actually taste like weed and good, and they don't. It's not that they're like getting you super baked, but the combo, because of the fact that
they're satisfying to smoke.
Yeah, then to the point where an average person wouldn't even, it wouldn't bother them, because they're not trying to get high anyway. They just like the.
They can hang out with their friends, be more
social.
No,
a friend of mine just in California wrote me and said he'd been to some place and found his dream bud. It's billed as Charlotte's Web, but it's a high CBD strain. Tastes great. Smoke it all day and still work. He's thrilled. My dream bud.
My dream bud.
Yeah, no, not ours. But anyway, it's
well,
cool.
No, but everybody's got different needs.
Each his own. But there's a lot of people going in that direction too, and there's a lot of people who. But in the perfect world, like I was saying, if you had that like 1% or 9.9, then you could like grow them to the point where then all those cannabinoids would be like, I think you just have a lot more to play with, and then you could start growing acres of it and not have to grow them, like, because basically everything else that we grow here is like cannabis plants disguised in the world of hemp as a hemp plant, because of the fact that it's high CBD, but they grow them all like, as big as this room right here, is if you can do it, and just fucking lots of arms, and it takes forever to harvest it, and there's no machine, and you're like, fuck. You know what I mean? It's not, still like slave labor almost at this point.
It's intensive.
Have you been doing CBD stuff, or have you been doing industrial, or a little of both?
A little of both, yeah, for sure. Seed grain, not so much fiber. There's been a lot of interest. A lot of people are always super motivated with fiber, but logistically it's tough. I mean, come to my farm and make my fiber, then what do I do with it? And I've got a giant fluffy pillow now that I have to do something with. Yeah, so, but we've seen the same thing on the seed too, just growing the grain, I guess, more than the seed, is the grain, and just it's a saturated market,
Right.
There's a lot of product out there.
So there's tons of, that's what I heard recently, is that there's lots of just kind of stagnant seeds that aren't going anywhere, and you know how seeds are, they don't last.
They're not going to last, and you're talking sprinkle and CBD into the cornflakes, but they need to put hemp seed into everything and just start mixing into this. You go to the health food store and you get your hemp seed in a bag, or you get your oil, and how many salads you eat, and how much yogurt or granola you put your hemp seed, and you start putting it in everything. You still only went through a pound.
Yeah, it's tough. I literally put it in everything, and we give it to my kid all the time, and it does take forever, because it's like he can only do so much.
So it's starting to back up in the supply chain now, and so. But it's interesting that a lot of people.
It's weird that nobody big on the baking side has really picked it up and decided to kind of push it harder, because then, I mean, that's something where at least you'll have, tens of thousands of shops that would take on that would still be a drop in the bucket, really. But there's like one company here that does it, which is nice, but it's one.
There's a couple cereal companies that have had hemp seed in their granolas for 10 or 15 years, but
nothing. But they're probably, like you said, the quantities.
yeah, right, 2 tablespoons in a box.
And then Dr. Bronner's, of course, is buying a bit, but not. Again, it's a piece of their. It's a piece of the puzzle.
We've seen.
What about animal feed? That's always been one of the uses.
That was what I was mentioning earlier.
That's very interesting. It would be very wonderful, and people have always kind of thought, try to work ways around it. But if you have an animal that you can't eat or doesn't make a product, like horses and dogs, and generally that's cool. But if you have a dairy cow and you're selling your milk, watch out, there could be THC in it. And the same thing, you sell eggs, chicken eggs, like professionally, can't. It'd be wonderful. It'd be wonderful for the cows, omegas.
Well, I think if you warn
chickens.
Everybody, then it's up to them, right? It'd be like,
but if you're a professional operator and you're selling to a brand, a national brand, they're not going to say, hold on a minute here. And so it's goofy.
But the specialty market, 1,000 True Fans, you get somebody to raise pasture-raised meat chickens and give them some hemp seed too. I don't know, years ago there was some video I saw about some chicken barbecue contest, and everybody did it, and the people had fed their chickens hemp seeds, and they were the, big fat winners.
Big fat winners.
Big fat winners. Winner, chicken dinner.
winner. Exactly.
But, I think the small, for all kinds of parts of this industry, like small, boutique.
Well, I think if you were to, sell to one guy who had really high quality, like Kobe style beef guy who really wants to pamper his cows, and you'd be like, look, I'm going to sell this to you. And then you need to market it that way. It that way. Put a big old weed leaf, brand them on the fucking thing, and sell that shit in Vegas for like top dollar, where it's like, not only do they get massaged, we give them fucking hemp every day. Blow smoke in their face. We blow smoke in their face. Come on.
They're very contented cows.
Content cows of Vegas.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's a great idea. That's
do
it. Good plan.
Put the money down. Let's go.
All right, let's go. We need a caller right now to
call
in.
Call in now to be the first guy to invest all this money into that idea.
We've got a plan.
Yeah, we have.
We got a plan. We just need infrastructure.
Yeah. No, we need cows. We need cows that want to eat hemp.
And massage and smoke.
And we'll find people who want to massage cows. That's going to be the hardest part in America.
I don't know.
No?
We're a bunch
Boulder?
of
We're going to go to Boulder and get a bunch of chicks, fucking
people who can't make. Isn't there a
failed yoga instructors can come and come.
Excess massage therapy school grads?
Yes. Perfect idea.
See?
Yeah.
Where's the caller?
Call in now. Call in now to invest. So, so I think the hemp side of the whole thing is going to finally make people realize, and that's the thing, was the guys like you were talking about who don't even get that they're the same plant. And I tried to, that's the way I steer anybody who wants to get into the cannabis world. If they haven't stepped into it already, they're too late. You're just way too late. You got to have been doing this, or else you're going to end up frustrated, dealing with people that you just, what's wrong with these people? It's like, dude, you come on, just slow down. It's like, be your first day and they'd be going crazy already. You'd be like, is this how it operates? Like, yes, it's exactly how it operates. And if it doesn't, something's wrong. You almost don't want it to be too smooth. Things got to be a little bit difficult to be worth it. That's the key. You don't want to can't just go for the easy, low hanging fruit. You got to work for the fucking end goal. And then but the hemp thing's wide open. It's just a matter of, if it's investment money, it's a matter of looking at acreage, and then the problem is it all just fucking backups right at the point where you're saying, when you got this big pile of this and all these seeds, and you're like, all right, so where's this fucking market now? And it's like,
it's the same thing as you're talking with the buds being $800 a pound, and maybe you get $1 less a pound from growing your hemp seed now than you used to, and now you're,
it's the first thing I said to him was hemp. Was animal feed. I was like, that's what you got to do, animal feed. And he was like, it's like,
that's just the feed world. Everything else is so much cheaper. If people grow hemp for a novelty and not its input costs and the machinery costs to grow hemp, then sure, grow a little field of hemp, 5-acre field of hemp, and feed your Kobe cows. That's a fantastic idea.
Right, but
for 100 acres
or more,
they get. No, there needs to be more processing infrastructure, which won't exist until there's an end market. Which won't be created until there's a supply, which won't happen until there's something to do with it.
Well, and we have another really good idea, though. The 15-foot plant is another great business idea. We have the high test buds at the top, and we can do the fiber. We could make a...
Oh, I know it would work. you create enough biomass there to just create a city every year if you're just churning it out, because you'd be like, okay, now we can... I think the one thing that's not being utilized enough is pelletizing all the hemp herds and then burning those and creating a little system where you're like, oh, we can build turbines, we can make power, we can do that, just kind of like get the thing into more of a biomass mentality, because its big downfall is it grows too much. That's like almost like the problem. That's probably why it got squashed in 37, is because they were like, this fucking shit is just growing like crazy. Like, we can't have this.
So what about like pellets for pellet stoves?
Yeah, exactly.
And then in New England, there's a lot of wood-fired power plants still.
There's here too, like that gypsum factory that's in Gypsum here, which is completely run on pellets. And so actually we went to them years ago in 2012 and kind of did a tour. And it was like one of the questions we asked the guy who was an engineer there. We're like, well, if you had a local source of like hemp pellets, would you be willing to switch over to that? He's like, what's and literally hemp pellets, as usual, hemp is like fucking superior. You just throw it in the mix. You're like, well, let's try this hemp shit, and you squish it up, and you're like, burns hotter, burns longer, higher BTUs, all better, cleaner, hit all the right fucking bells and whistles, and you're like, well, there you go. There's a whole fucking industry right there if you can turn that into that. But and you think seeds would add to the fucking octane or something. Those would be like
the fat would make it snap and burn better.
So you could kind of like do a little blendo action, and stand up there and dump those things in. But there's got to be, that's the thing with hemp, you would have to figure out another angle, because the thing is, as a seed, we already know that they might, depending on their temperature and how long they're going to be in there, and for food is even worse, because for growing they'll actually last a long time, but taste and rancidness, they're going to go quick.
And there's a bunch of microbiome. Then what?
With THC, obviously, when growing, they're like hitting, if you stay in the ground too long, something's going to go. And if you get tested too late, so you're better off to harvest early, have them come and test and get below the number and get the fuck out, and then actually go to final, because they might, if you go, 2 more weeks, that'd just be enough to spike, and then they come in and test, and then you have to take the whole field down.
Because it's too high?
Too high THC, yeah. So
for hemp or for
hemp?
For hemp, okay.
Not for weed. Yeah, you're over.
You're over. You're
over. You're done.
Chop the field. It's 31%.
Wait a second.
30% max. 30% max.
When did they cap weed strength?
No, they were trying. They were trying at one point, and crazy numbers like 15%. You were like, we're going to have to kill all the strains we have. Like, everything we've worked on, we'd have to kill, and everything that we'd be down to pretty much growing fucking 14%ers. Soma strains, I guess, at that point. Right?
They're tasty. They're really tasty, though.
At that point, we would be growing those 14.7 strains. That's exactly. Remember at the Cannabis Cup when we did the testing? That was a big controversy.
Do you remember what year that was, Robert?
2002.
Okay.
I remember because we had it printed. It was 2002. And it was a reverse flip. Remember that?
No, see, I was gone then. It was over.
You were already gone.
I think so.
It could have been 99.
Oh, no, 2002? Yeah. I was still in town, but I must have gone.
Could have been 99. Couldn't have been. Actually, now that I was so quick to say 2002. Now I'm thinking about this piece of paper, because we had it printed and we had it in the shop.
99 was my last year. That was the year that Ariane and his 2 cousins' shops banded together.
Oh yeah, that was the Banded Together shop.
That was the Banded Together.
Oh, you're allowed to talk about everything on the show. There's no holds barred here. We can talk about history as it really happened, because that's important. But that was the year that it was.
What were the other 2 shops? I can't remember.
One of them's still there, I believe, and the other one.
One of them had a Russian kind of name, didn't it?
Yeah, that was the
his cousin
with a K or something like that.
Kaczynski?
No, Kaczynski was an old one that was already there. That
anyhow.
It was an old one, but it'll come to me. I know where it was, and then the thing is, there was 3 shops. They were all interrelated, and they basically did the old 0 for everybody else.
That was the year that Steve Hager thought it'd be a really good idea to, instead of importing expensive celebrity judges, to let the coffee shops judge the seed company entries.
Oh, that was a bad one. Yeah, I remember that. That was a really bad idea.
And
yeah, that was That was one of those like, no, you've let the wolf.
Fox can guard the hen house.
Yeah, it totally was that in a heartbeat. And it was like, okay, that's not going to get completely and utterly fucked up, which it did.
Well, no, it was pretty simple. Because I had the accountants counting the ballots instead of
bunch of stoners.
Dragon crew at the hotel in the middle of the night.
Right.
And they went, this is not right. This is not right. These numbers don't add up. This is very clear that these three people they marked each other's stuff up and everything else. We won't certify your results if we include these numbers.
So they got disqualified.
Disqualified.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, and it was controversial. Ooh. Oh, my God. Well, the thing about...
No, they didn't get disqualified, but their votes didn't count.
Yeah.
So things came out kind of more the way they should have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my ass fired.
Yeah, and then that was actually in the paper, and it was a real big deal. It was like one of those, like, it literally was American politics in Holland. You could just see how it operated, and then now it's like fully exposed that this is how it all works anyway. And it was just like, wow, all inside jobs and just like total, like, oh my God, and just being, and then of course scapegoat, and then. And it was, like, again, like I said, it got real sloppy after that, and then it blew up even bigger, and then now it got worldwide.
Gabe was the drummer, but there was another. Oh, God, I can see that guy they brought in back.
Oh, no, you mean you're talking about Money Mike?
No, never mind.
You remember Money Mike? The guy who took over the Cup and then took all the money, which his name's Money Mike. He's going to take the money. That's just the way it goes, but you don't remember Money Mike?
No.
He was a bass player. That's who you're thinking of. I think that's who you're thinking of.
No.
No?
No, there was some guy who was part of the rainbow thing. And
so, Annie, come on, you can do it. She's going to, see, this is the thing. I told Annie, how many years ago did I tell you to write a book? I told you to write a book, like, I don't know, a while ago. I was like, Annie, someone's got to write the book about the crazy times and the high crimes of high times in Amsterdam and something like that. Come on, you could have pulled this together. We could have had a winner. Right now, it could be coming out.
We could have had a self-published book there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was time. I think now people are interested because it's getting so corporatized already at this point. But it's the same players. Now and then, I mean, we had Steve D'Angelo in the house. We had all the guys who became the names that everybody seems to know. You haven't seen the show yet. You see Disjointed? It's a terrible show. Mm-mm. Okay, anyway, they do Angelo DiStevio on there.
Angelo DiStevio?
They do the character called Angelo DiStevio on that show. It's like, it's ridiculous. And so the fact that people like that we knew from back in the day, which he was doing Ecolution at the time, so he had the hemp line. And actually they were more together. Like, I thought that they were going to blow up, because they definitely had the more. They were, because we were the kids, we were just the young kids who had the hemp store in Amsterdam. We were nothing, right? In their eyes, of course, we were nothing. But when they got there, they realized, like, oh shit, we're in Amsterdam, and all of a sudden it was like. So then I had Steve renting a little office in our spot when we had remember we kind of took over the whole building at one point. Like, we literally at one point we just kept expanding because our the way those houses are built in Amsterdam, like we were in one spot, and then all of a sudden it opened up next door, and we're like, we're taking it, and we just took it and had this weird. Remember that weird foyer that we had?
Oh yeah.
And then we called it. That was when we're the Empire State Building because we're getting so big, right? We were like, we're the Empire State Building, and I went to the Empire State Building that year, and I took photos, and it must have looked like a total terrorist because it was pre 9/11. But I was there taking all pictures of it, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make the exact copy.
Of the lobby.
So when you came in, you're all woo. And of course, we got kicked out way before I ever got a chance to do any of that. But it was like, I kind of had it like in my mind. I was like, oh, I could do this. So I can make the desk over here, and I'm going to make this and put the American flag. But you had to go up the stairs. Because our place was so scary to go into, the way the original entrance, that we finally had a real entrance. But then I think we closed before we ever even got to like anybody in that entrance. It was like they tricked us. They basically said you could have the whole building, and then like within 3 months the whole building got shut down. So it was like, oh, you just gave it to me so I could pay rent on all these
empty spaces that
you were just about to get rid of, and you're like, oh, I'll let these dumbass Americans keep buying everything, because I had Victor with me. And Victor was Mr. fucking $1,000 at the time, or 1,000 guilders. And he always would like throwing around. Remember the 1,000 guilder note?
Yeah.
Those were the days, right? The old 1,000 guilder note. Jesus. That stuff was good because, I mean, obviously, you were so paranoid when you had it with you. You didn't, you never stopped feeling your pocket, and you couldn't feel it because it was so small.
Right.
In your sock.
So you'd be all worried.
Tiny pocket.
That's a lot of money to have on one piece of paper.
It is. It was like $500 at the time, and it was just like, whoa, this is crazy. I mean, they have, but all that money was awesome. Like Guilders, 50 was the best.
The best.
Number one, the number one bill.
I saved one. I got it framed in a clear glass thing, so you can see the watermark.
Yeah, those were the best. And then, it was just the vibe changed once that money changed. It was like the town was no fun anymore. It was like instantly, and it was.
Nobody had black money anymore. They didn't have any time to accumulate extra euros, and their extra guilders were worth nothing.
Yeah, it was a strange time in Amsterdam for sure.
And everything seemed to cost in euros what it used to cost in guilders.
Overnight, yeah. It was like if you went to get a two guilder soda, now it was €2, and you're like, that's like $3. You know, like whoa, that's like $5. You're like, they didn't give a fuck. They were just like, not changing. They just put like, you could see like,
just slap up the euro sign.
You could see it was not the same. Everything else was different. That was it was a weird time. And it was also like, I was out of the country on the day that it actually happened, so I was calling back to see, like, so what's going on? And they're like, oh, dude, it's ridiculous. I remember I was talking to Al, and he goes, like, you stand in line, and everyone just is looking at their hand, trying to figure out what the
money is.
What's the money? Like, oh, what am I doing with this? And they were like, backing up in line, and it was like all Dutch people getting mad and not understanding why things were costing, and it was like, it was literally all the little things that got chiseled, and you couldn't, they couldn't get you on your rent, they couldn't get you on like cars, stupid, big stuff, but all the little things, everybody got hammered, and it was kind of like the vibe changed. And then, I mean, I went from 190 guilders, which is like about $90 a month for my apartment in the Reislokade, to, I think I paid like 200 euros on the way out or something, or 2,600 euros on one place, and I was just like, see, that's literally like 40 times as much. I was like, it felt like so much. It was like, oh my god, that was like 4 times as much. But it was, it was crazy. It was like.
But that wasn't just a change of currency. That was just Amsterdam.
No, it just changed.
Crazy.
It changes the vibe. It just showed how the last. I mean, I was there 20 years, so the first 10 years was pre-euro, and then the second were total euro, and it was like, well, pretty much how it all, in my head, if I think back, I'm like, yeah, it's actually when it all just kind of sucked all of a sudden, because you had a harder time. Like the only convenience was, I mean, it wasn't even convenience, because the thing is, when everybody who came there was hustle days, when everybody was hustling, and you go to the change place and you just be like nuts, dude. It'd be like changing $100,000 and fucking, it'd be like no questions asked, and then. Everybody who was standing in line, you'd look and you'd be like, oh, it's like hustle, hustle, hustle. Everybody had their little thing going on, but nobody, it was just weird. It was like it was very old school Amsterdam, and old, and people played those dollars and euros, or it wasn't even euros, but all those different currencies, and people were, you were losing and gaining. In a way, it sucked, but at the same time, you could be on the gaining side too, so it didn't always suck. There was times when I went in and they were so fucking just overworked that they calculated it in the wrong way, and just fucking, and I just watched them go like wait, oh, that's too much. Like, thank you, and just walked away. And it was like, I think that she just fucking gave me pounds instead of dollars. Nailed it, you know what I mean? Going back, like, I'll
try that again in a minute.
But it was just, you could see it was like she wasn't paying attention. She was just like, oh, he's, and I'm talking in English, and I'm giving her dollars, but she's thinking in pounds. I don't know. It was just, one of those perfect moments in time. I was like, this is the perfect, and it was like, an extra $500 or something crazy. But at the time, it was definitely needed. It was needed. Amazingly, I needed that at the time. But you haven't been back in a while, have you?
I was there last in 2014.
Okay, it's been a few. But did you see? So you've been there since about 3 years after I was there, and I think it was in the middle of turning into a Nutella and hamburger town is what when I left. Everything seemed to be like a hamburger shop on every fucking thing that was trying to emulate the American burger spot, but they all just copied each other. It was all Israeli owned, and they all copied each other. And they were like, yes, right. And my friend Diego did the interior of the original one, and then everybody. It was just like the classic. Amsterdam's always like what's the hot trend of the, like for mushroom shops were a big hot trend for one to.
Australian chocolate, or foo chocolate shops like Puccini and.
Puccini. Now that's that's another story. That was the fire, best chocolate in fucking Amsterdam, pretty much.
And right across the street from the gray area.
Lucky bastards. Yes, they were. They were lucky for that. But
are they still there?
The gray area, yeah, still. Of course, it's still there. Of course, still there. Haven't painted the place. Haven't put any. Nothing's same.
Haven't washed the coffee.
Haven't washed the coffee cups. We know all the rules. We know we know exactly what's going down there. No, it's interesting because like I said, the longer I've been gone, the longer I've been like, okay, well, it's almost better to like let it just like get paved over the part that you think, because I know when I go there I'm going to be totally disappointed anyway, so I don't even want to like without the shop, because once we closed the shop, which was 3 years ago, I didn't even realize it was like 3 years ago. I thought it was like, I told somebody it was like last year. Oh yeah, like last year. I was like, no, my wife's like 3 years ago. I was like 3 years ago. Holy shit, time flies. But we were kind of a staple there. So for us, or for me at least, if I don't have a shop and I don't have a fucking mini car to drive around, then I'm not going to fucking waste any time there. Because last time I went there, my friend Rodrigue let me borrow the car that I sold to his friend, which was not the 3-wheeler, unfortunately, which is gone, but it was a 4-wheel diesel thing that I had. And I literally got pulled over on the first day I was back and fucking got my things checked. And I was just like, wow, this place is really like exactly what I thought when I left. Like, oh, it's getting all kind of crazy and you got to watch out for getting pulled over. Fucking first day I was driving, they were like, oh, you come in. They have these like mega checks. Remember the mega checks?
Yeah.
The mega checks. They sucked. They were like,
oh, right. They'd stop you and they'd check all your records. Have you paid your electric bill?
Everything. Anything and everything. It's all interconnected. So they'd be like, all right, we got the fucking tax man. We got the fucking, like, everything you wouldn't think of. It's like, oh, wait, okay, taxes? Like, out of the blue, there's a tax guy there checking your shit. You know what I mean? That was like typical Dutch right there. But they'd be also, yeah, like you said, all your utilities are up to date and whatever bullshit. And you're just like, huh? And then on top of that, sometimes they'd go like mirrors under the car and get all nuts, you know what I mean? Yeah, it was like, there was times where I got pulled over in my little Vespa car and fucking had everything from the beginning to the end in the car, like soil and clones and fucking money and weed and hash. And like, you know, like, oh, start thinking about all the stuff I have. It's all in my little fucking bag, you know, and I'm like, oh my God. And had to like stand out in front of the, like pull into the spot and then stand there and just like,
wait.
Just, yeah, no, totally Jedi mind trick the fucking cop, like just talking to him about anything that I need to, and like, oh, where you from? And it was like the perfect cop. He had his hat back, and he was like, where are you from? Like, because at first I'm like, you know, I did the classic, ik spreek Engels, you know? And they're like, huh? And I'm like, oh, you speak English? And he's like, oh yeah, sure, where you from? Oh, New York. And then we just went on and talked about New York for like 5 minutes, and then he let me drive away, and I was like, holy shit, dude, that was like that literally was the, like, oh, I'm going to jail, you know, oh, well, with, like, packing my shit. I'm thinking about, I got, like, knives in the car, stupid shit that, you know, just like, yeah, I can leave a knife there just in case, and got this weed and this hash and this money and fucking clones that I was delivering to somebody and fucking soil that I was carrying for somebody, and I was just like, this is too easy, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, yes, anything is going to lead to something else. There's nothing that can't lead them into something, you know? So if I open the back, they're going to go, oh, clones. What else do you have?
What else you got, bud?
And if they look in the front, they're going to go, a bunch of weed and joints and things. And, you know. Amsterdam was weird like that. It was one of those, even though the cops were hardcore, I think they were more hardcore for heroin and money and, you know, human trafficking. And they were dealing with some, you know, a lot of shady shit. And weed wasn't a big deal. But then it became a big deal. And then it never stopped, sort of like they just kind of like, they never were really happy with it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. No, they never liked it.
No. There was times there, like, and when I first, everybody who moves there thinks it's fucking awesome for a couple of years. Woo, it's great. Then you get busted. then you realize this place sucks. But so do you ever feel like going back to Europe though? Because America's getting kind of weird and crazy. I'm sure you noticed. I'm sure you seem to notice.
I've noticed that, but where I live in New Hampshire is such a small town that it's hardly like living in America.
Right, it's peaceful.
And quiet, you keep your head down, you don't talk politics with people that you don't know already.
Any Trump supporters out there? A lot of them?
Oh, yeah, we got plenty of them. And just like here, they all left the election signs up.
Still up there, still up
Still,
there.
like
they're in my neighborhood. They're all up in my neighborhood.
Creeps
down
me
south.
out. It's like this, loyalty oath kind of thing.
Yeah. Hey, now.
So there's a question from the chat room.
Uh-oh, Trump supporters.
Murdered in my bed tonight.
Making fun of my man.
Question for Adam. Does he remember ice from the Bluebird coffee shop? First strain to test at 21%.
Of course, and that was the same year that we had it tested. Wasn't 21% though. It must have been higher than that.
And they're wondering of the lineage.
I think it was 31% is what it was, right?
They said 21.
No,
right
I
think
think it was like 28 or something like that. It was really high. It was like
really high.
It was the highest on the list. It was ice, and then I think we were Sage and Sour right under it, or was 2 under it, I think, or something like that. We were like in the top 3 or something like that. I think ours is 20. At that time, ours was only like 20, just over 20. So that was like, whoa, 28 or something crazy. But the thing about ice is it didn't last very long. It was maybe 3 or 4 years, and then Nirvana was selling it for a while, seed form, and that was like their best seller. I remember that was kind of their, like everybody has their like Northern Light or their, we had our Sage or MK or whatever that just kind of cranks out, and that was their big seller. But I think after about 3 or 4 years, it was kind of like petered out, and it didn't seem like it held, kind of like White Widow. White Widow was also like, had its moment in the sun, and it got a huge name, but it didn't stay around as a flavor. Like a flavor disappeared quickly.
Are you aware of the lineage
of the ice? Not really offhand. And I mean, it was real round. The whole thing, I knew how it grew, and it was like a fuzzball when it was vegging. It was just kind of like the noticeable round Q-tip sort of bud shape where it wasn't pyramid at all. It was really rounded, and then it kind of filled in from there a lot like a Northern Lights does and stuff. And it kind of filled in. Instead of being like nodes going together, it kind of filled from the top down. So it was a cool plant and stayed kind of small, and it was easy to clone, and it was kind of but it didn't seem as strong as it was. It had that kind of like almost like bathroom musty kind of vibe to it. It wasn't like it didn't taste good, but it was really, really resiny, and that resin stayed real wet. And so it always had this kind of like almost not without the cat piss, without the cat piss. You know what I mean? Like just the cat box maybe smell or something. It was just funky in a weird way. I didn't really like it. It was, but it was surprising. It was like, holy shit, this plant is the strongest shit on the entire list. And it was by a long shot too. I remember it was like about a 5-point difference. So, Nirvana was my best choice back in the day because they're the only ones that kind of kept it going that I know from over there. Guess that's an answer. Do you remember Nirvana, right?
Of course.
Get up to the front.
Of course.
Remember Buddy? He took it over in the end. You remember Buddy?
I hadn't thought about it for a long time.
Yeah, but you remember that guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Buddy ended up taking over that place. And, I mean, I think he still does. And Mao was involved still, but that was, remember Mao back in the day?
Who could forget?
So we had, and that was the funny thing is back in the day when we were selling seeds, I don't know if you remember this, but back in the day, before we just kind of concentrated more on THCs, we were like, before we even had THCs, we were CIA, right? And then we had Positronics lists, and we had Sensi's list, and we had Nirvana's list, and we had Hank's list, and then we had our Bubblegum at one point, and then we had a few other, and then we had Tony and Simon's Cerebral Seeds for a little while. And then, do you remember that?
Yes.
And then we had, so at one point I remember being like, sitting in my place, and I was all like, dude, I'm the biggest seed bank in the world. And nobody cared, you know what I mean? Nobody gave a shit. And then, but at the time I had 135 strains on the list, and I was like, but of course it was like the town was so small, I didn't have to have any stock. I just had to make a phone call and
ride your bike over.
Ride my bike over and then fucking ride back and then get home and then have someone entertain while I frantically fucking packed everything and pulled out my little label maker, you know what I mean? And it was just like ridiculously low budge, but at the same time it was just like the town was so small. And the weird part was that every single one of those relationships was actually kind of hard to make because those people were all kind of like still
so secretive
and weird. So it was like, you know, the secret bike ride, and it was like, and then yeah, it was just it was a weird time because everybody had their own thing. And Casey Brains, but I didn't really work with him. And I just realized the other day, somebody said this, and I never knew this, but he said that every year he would come out with a new number for his birthday. Did you ever hear that? Like, I remember Casey 36 or whatever was his big strain. So maybe he was 36 years old back in the day. Do you ever remember that story?
No, I never heard that story.
No. And then I also think, I have a feeling that this is all made up shit because I was listening to this guy and I was like, wait a minute. He thinks Casey Brains is from Brazil. And I'll tell you, that guy is 100% from a little village in Holland, and he rides a Harley, and he's drunk as fuck.
Most of the time.
Every time I ever saw him. So I'm like, that is a complete facade.
But he did have a Brazil thing that
he had a Brazilian
did,
cross, exactly. So it was just funny because it was like somebody was quoting kind of like, Casey Brains.
Quoting the PR release.
Yeah, and I was like, I've never heard the whole year thing. That's like, because I don't remember anything like coming out.
No.
All I remember is the same old shit. Casey 36, and there was another one, Casey 44 or something like that. Or
I only remember one numbered one, but
could have been the years. I don't know. It was weird. Anyway, but I also know that the guy only grew 12 plants in his backyard and fucking hit them all with the same mail, and that was it. It wasn't like too much work involved, you know. It was just kind of like, then he got really drunk and really rowdy when he came to the shows. Remember at the Knowles thing? That was pretty funny. In the one in Harlem that he did the first year, he did his Harlem Cup thing that he kind of did, which turned kind of.
I don't know if I went to that.
Pretty sure he should have. He should have went.
I should have went. I'm sure I was there.
It was pretty interesting because the thing about Holland was it was like Amsterdam was always a little more on point. Everyone kind of knew what you're talking. Once you got out of it, even like Harlem, like where Noel was at, like it was a good town, like a couple good coffee shops. You ever go out there? You got to Harlem when you were there?
No. It was always just in...
See, everyone just came. Nobody ever, like, ventures.
People think Amsterdam is a country.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't think that. I just was overwhelmed with the language and...
It's interesting when you leave the town, too.
Didn't know a lot of people very well in the community, so it was just kind of, whoa, catching... I went outside a little bit, Leiden, and a couple of places, I think. Rob had said, hey, go check out this... You know, and I'd go check something out. But I'd be by myself and not know anybody.
Right, and it's a little scary.
Yeah, so I pretty much just stuck around with folks I knew in town when I came. So, yeah, but, yeah, there you go.
It's interesting. Yeah, whenever you went to these little towns, it'd be pretty interesting to see how 50 miles fucking changes everything. You know, you're like, oh, wow, like these guys, like the number of people who speak... Well, they
don't speak English as much. Yeah.
They speak English better than we speak Dutch, but they are totally intimidated by it. And you know, and like I would try to. There was one town up north that I was living in for a little while, and we were growing in this house, and it was like, just didn't want to leave the house because every time I left the house, just automatically, if I opened my mouth, anybody's like, you know, what's up? And they'd all be nervous, and then they wouldn't, you know, and it would just like instantly be like, what's going on? And I just go like straight back to the house. And it was a classic grow house too, where we had like no furniture, a couch, a TV, and then like some beds on the ground upstairs, and that was it. And like the rest was just like whatever you brought for the weekend. You know what I mean? And you get there, and it was like, oh man, it was just weird because you go to the little tiny grocery store there, and then you'd be like, people would be like in shock because you'd be walking in there and it'd be like, all right, this is definitely not low key at all, even though, you know, and I just moved there, so I could barely, you know, and then I also was in the north of Holland, which is like not even the same language as Amsterdam.
As the rest, right?
Yeah, like they have their own whole dialect, and it's like nobody can understand it from down south, so there's really no way to learn. Can't move into this town, start growing weed, and learn this dialect, you know what I mean, unless you're fucking really on point, and definitely wasn't me. But yeah, it was funny. It was one of those like destined to, like, if I think about it now, it's just like, wow, I would never, because you're already out of place anyway, and then we're in some little, and then the funniest part was actually like 5, maybe more, like 10 years later, I was with Al, went to a heavy metal festival, and I like laid down in the back of it. I remember like we got super high, and we like laid down, and just like, wake us up when we get there, right? And we wake up, actually at one point, they're like, hey, we're here, and like we get up, and I look out, and I'm like, holy shit, dude, we're in the same town that I lived in when I first moved here. And I was like looking around, and it was like like a rock festival going on right behind our house was a big field, and they had like football course and football things set up there. So they were like having a rock concert there. And I was like, whoa, dude, we're like 200 feet from my old house. It was just weird. It was like, of all places, I ended up right back in the same spot. And everybody was wearing wooden shoes, right, with like flames on them and shit, because they were like, that was the cool. That's how trendy this town was. It was literally, people still wore wooden shoes. And then because you're in the field, that's where you wear wooden shoes, because it keeps you from getting wet, because you're kind of up and above it. So I look around, and I'm like, dude, everyone's got custom like Slayer fucking shoes and fucking hand designs, and everybody's painted them. And I was like, this is nuts, dude. It was actually pretty funny. It was one of those.
I like that.
It was hilarious. It was like, this is the ultimate Dutch experience right here. You got painted shoes, and then everyone was serious, like, well, hardcore. And you're like, okay, you're hardcore, but you're wearing wooden shoes. It's not. Something's not working right there, So I miss those things, the old wackiness of it all. But I think that a lot of that stuff's.
I think a lot of that's gone. I remember when I first moved there, if you didn't finish your shopping by 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon, there was no hope of going anywhere but the really expensive night shop.
The Avandekoop. That's where I always ended up anyway.
Well,
late, yeah.
Yeah, you're a late night guy, but Monday afternoon the shop's opened again. We haven't done that here for years.
Yeah, no 24 hours. Now I'm sure it's all globalized.
Right.
It's tasty, actually.
Checking was asking what your highest percentage on sage and sour was.
That usually ends up in around the 25, 26 range or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. We got a really frosty. I think the one that we got that one cut, that purple cut, is like 28, but that's really one of those classic low yielding, high resin count plants. You're like, I got to keep you around. So it's interesting because it was like one of those things I grew recently, and it was the smallest plant in the room because it got put in late. And resin weighs so much more than flower. So obviously, you get this little tiny plant putting out like. It's going to be nothing, and it ended up being a little over a quarter pound, but it was like tiny, it was tiny, and it was just like, never would have thought. And then you get another plant, and you're like, oh, that's for sure a pound, and then it's like, 380 grams or some bullshit, and you're like, what? Like, doesn't even make sense, but it does, because once you realize you're growing resin. But sometimes you get those freak plants, too, that don't want to fill out at all.
Yeah.
It's just all inwards work, but I'm sure if you're working with land races, you found a lot of weird.
That's always the joy, is finding the mutants and the.
That's what I always say.
Yeah. And the larger field you get to work with, the more you get to see.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's I've always enjoyed, the more scientific approach of the deal of documenting them and looking for those special ones to see a field that's an acre of any type of cannabis, and being able to go through and say, hey, here's a good one, here's a whole bunch that aren't good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the first hemp field here was from Ryan Laughlin. We were out there. We had to end up having to hand pick it because the machinery just was got completely gummed up right out of the gate and didn't work. And it was it's funny because we were just standing around and everybody's my kid's there and he's cleaning up some stuff, and it's like, I'm gonna go for a walk around and just see if I see, because it was kind of a crappy year where they the pig grass that was there just kind of overtook. You could see where it came up too fast, so the herb was kind of thwarted, and it was here and there and sporadic. So I was walking around, and it took me like half an hour. And I picked out like 3 examples and, made little notes. And like, oh, this one. And I was like, ooh, this looks, I saw something. That one looks really nice. And like, I was like, I walk over to it. And I took a piece and I brought it back. And then I gave it to, I forget who, but a guy was about to do some testing. And he's like, oh, I'll throw it in with my tests. And I'm like, cool. And then like, literally a couple days later, Ryan's like, dude, you managed to pick the one fucking hot plant, like, just like, so I'm so glad you found it, because it was like just definitely over the limit. And it was like, yeah, because it looked good, it was like the one. And I was like, so I think if, especially because these things were all spread out, so it was like that thing just had its own space and it kind of did its thing, and it was like, but it was really obvious. It was like, okay, that fucking thing looks like it's got some life to it, you know what I mean? And that's almost like, it's pretty hard when you have a 10,000 plant thing to find.
Right.
I mean, what do you look for? What's your number one sort of, if you're doing large scale stuff? Because there's always going to be certain things that you would axe right away, because it's
it's what's your agenda?
Of course.
What are you breeding for? Are you just love the plant and like the only one in the field that was purple, or the one that had the pink pistils, or especially working with some hemp varieties, and then all of a sudden you see one that's just soaked in resin. Where did this come from? It's still skinny and hempy, but it's just
right.
And I've seen that a few times, and stinky even, really smelling. And you're like, what's going on with this one plant? Kind of like you're saying, you're looking through this ocean and you find one plant. So, yeah.
Do you get to have them sort of tested properly with sort of gas chromatography or anything, or do you have that kind of backup, or you just kind of go more on visuals and kind of look at stuff?
It depends on what we're working with at the time.
Yeah, that's the thing that now I think it's kind of like the good and the bad side of it all, is that a lot of people have access to some pretty killer testing equipment.
Right.
But then that also, a lot of people are now not growing things out. They're just growing them up to a certain point, having them tested, and if it's not interesting, throwing it away.
Right.
Because they're really looking for like super extreme, interesting stuff. And that makes sense, I guess, but at the same time, it's kind of like obviously if you're looking for certain, like, out of the gate CPGs or some sort of thing and you're not finding it, that's that. But there's something to be said for like everything having a chance to kind of run through its course, because at the end of the day, I mean, there's a kind of cornucopia of like things that happen, and it's all about timing, and it's like things just kind of keep, like, that's why if you harvest at 6 weeks you can get away with it, but if you harvest at 8 weeks it's going to be over, and there's going to be a whole other cannabinoid profile that's going to actually be expressed. So you're like, okay, well, without doing it, it's kind of hard. You might miss out on some other really cool anomalies that are like growth anomalies that you can't test on. You can't see that on a little seed. So I think it's kind of like it's the pro-life, bro. It's pro-life, pro-plant life. Don't kill plants, bro. No, but I always had that problem as a breeder. That's been my like downfall, and now I'm kind of limited on the number of plants. So I'm all like, this is like super hard. Yeah. Whereas before it was more just limited on space or whatever, and you always ended up keeping things that were like, one day. It's almost like finding junk. You're like, well, one day I'm going to use that, and you don't even know if you ever really are, but you just can't. And it's like, and I'll take cuts off of cuts for years and be like, all right, I'm going to root it. The minute that thing roots, you're out the door, and then you got a new thing, and then you transplant that, and then you're like, sometimes you haven't flowered it for years, but you might need it, someday. And then those things, I lost a lot of those over the years, and then you're like, don't really need it, but, then there's a certain moment in time where you're like, you almost can't remember it, and you're like, shit. And then if you ever get reminded, you're like, it's the worst thing ever that you lost it, because you already went through the thing, and then you realize a lot of times there's certain things that I've left to die and like think I'm whatever. Then later you realize like, fuck. Especially males, that's the thing that kills me the most, because like most of the males are really hard to keep anyway, because they tend to like want to pre-flower or do something stupid, and you're like, you know, that's like the hardest thing. And then you also know you can't replicate it again, so it's like, do you keep it or not? But you just have to produce enough seed, I guess, then to hold on to that. But yeah, it's one of those tough things. It's a battle. It is, literally. It's a literal battle. Male-wise, do you have anything kind of substantial CBD producing or anything in your corrals, or are you just kind of...
No, the stuff I've been working with for over the last many years has not been CBD oriented at all.
Uh-huh.
So it's interesting to look at that now, because it's been such a focus on producing a grain crop, a health food product, and going for oil profiles of that seed and flavor profiles and stuff of that seed, and what is the latitude and things like this. And now it's, you know, looking at terpene profiles, and you know, so it's really interesting having a love for the plant. You're just mesmerized by.
Well, that's the thing. Nobody really saw this coming until 10 years ago, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, kind of saw it ahead of the game. Now all of a sudden it's at full steam, and you're like, all right, it's definitely going to get to the tipping point, because it went from 20,000 a kilo to 2, you know, or now it's like 4 if you can find it, you know, on humongous quantities, and then everyone's under contract, and it's all like very. It's kind of like the hemp market is in China, where you keep trying to find new angles and you end up right back at the same fucking place. You're like, oh, it all comes through these people and those people and those people, and that's it. They've got it all dialed in, because actually all the factories all work together. You know what I mean? So you're like, oh, okay, I see it. No, it's not. It's not like you're gonna get any. They all work. They all raise and lower the price and deciding on how much orders are done, and it's very hard to. You can't just. It's very hard to grow your own hemp and process it right now anywhere. So when China does it, you figure out like pretty quickly, like, okay, it doesn't matter which angle you're working, these guys got you worked. You know what I mean? And it's also depending on how much is ordered every year, and they just keep ramping up every year. So, like we talked about earlier, I don't see fiber being the focus for anybody, but I mean, CBD definitely is the thing that's the driver right now, but I also see that market falling pretty quickly because of overproduction pretty fast.
Yeah, like you said, China gets involved with it on a.
Well, they already do. I mean, they do, and the thing is, it's now down to the choice of the consumers. So, like we said earlier, the ones that don't like it, from the Californians who claim that the Colorado hemp isn't good. They don't even see that the reality is it's not the Colorado hemp; it's the fucking Chinese hemp that you got to worry about more, because they don't have the same regulations, and they're going to be able to pump out, you know, definitely more heavy, like that. All that stuff he talked about is the Chinese problem, the heavy metals and all that things.
Yeah.
And those are so
that makes sense.
So it's almost like a confusion from.
But the way he pointed at Colorado,
yeah.
I was like, okay, man.
Right. Well, I mean, Colorado is one of those places that is kind of like, unfortunately, very contaminated when it comes to like the. Pretty close to my fucking part of town too. Like, I'm listening on the radio the other day, and they're like talking about the most contaminated parts of America, you know, and it's like, oh, it's just north of my neighborhood. I'm like, that's fucking great to know, you know what I mean? It's like, and it's literally becoming like worth 200% more than it was last year in that neighborhood, just because of people. It's like more towards I-70, so it's like a mile away or something like that, but it's like, you know, a mile's not that far when it comes to the most contaminated place on earth. You know, you're like, okay, that sounds pretty bad, you know, or in the USA at least. And it was, you know, it's one of those places where there's a few major, what do they call it, the super funds or whatever?
Superfund sites.
Yeah, so there's like a couple of them in this state, and the other one that's really, really bad is the Rocky Flats, and that's like, kind of like the two places that I lived since I've been here. I'm like, I live right above Rocky Flats, and now I live just south of the other one. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's definitely weird, because you feel like Colorado is very, very, very natural, and it's got this vibe in the water, and you think everything's going to be good. But then the Rocky Flats is like kind of where they did a lot of nuclear stuff. So it's like all of a sudden, and it's dusty, and they kind of like built a sarcophagus and buried. You know, just like all the stuff about it sounds terrible. And then I went by the neighborhood recently because I used to live up there, and I went to drop off something to the old landlord, and I was like, as I was driving up, I'm looking, and I'm like, holy fuck, dude, there's like 400 new houses right over the Rocky, like built on the Rocky Flats, you know what I mean? And it's like, wow. Like when I came back last time, there was just, the last time I left, there was a new sign that they put up, and it was like, what, is that a neighborhood now? You know, like, oh shit, that's kind of weird. And I just drove back now, and it's at least 200, maybe 300 houses, and it's like, they're off the main road, but they're, you know, they build them in very weird here, like clustery, instead of spreading out because you got all this room. It's like very clustered up neighborhoods, and you're like, it must be a weird sell because you're like kind of like a mile from the old nuclear fucking facilities, and
they're selling them to people who don't know that there was a nuclear facility there.
But there's no way around knowing that it's like literally the most famous Superfund in the whole fucking state. It's just weird. It's weird that they would actually build houses on it. But it kind of shows you where the thinking here goes sometimes, because sometimes you're like, it's crazy where you're just like, they have all this room in Colorado, but yet they build so tight, and you know, you realize no one's growing in those neighborhoods. You're like, you're definitely like right on top of each other's garages and right on top of each other's any other spaces. And it's just like, it's like, wow, they almost, remember how in Holland, a lot of the places where after a while they'd build them to be anti-grower, like, the way it ventilated, like you had a little slide, and you'd be like, what the fuck is this? And it's like, you felt like you were in a prison or something, and it was just like a little slide, and that was it. There was no other way to tap in, so you'd have to get all creative and build boxes. And I had these like window slot boxes that I built that I just take them from place to place, and I'd always end up with like a tiniest, like they give you like a 3 inches by, you know, X amount of space. That's it. There's no other place, and I have to like every time be custom. So after a while, I kind of got to the, I think I got myself a pattern here. Like I'm just going to start using the same box, and I'd have to like, I could tap any round holes in the bottom, and I had like a periscope. You have to go up like that.
Yeah.
Built traps in between and put like filters, and it's fucking ridiculous. Holland was always like, yeah, it was the biggest struggle to build the smallest, stupidest rooms that you like now would like laugh at because they'd be maybe as big as this if you're lucky, but it'd be like fucking overbuilt like crazy because you'd have to think about neighbors above you, and like, you know, now you know that everyone would just know exactly what's up. Back then people just were like, why does my whole place vibrate every day at this certain time? And it was like, oh shit, the pumps are on your roof. So I'd have to like suspend the pumps on bungee cords and make sure that they're sitting in the res, and you know, I'll just like always overthink everything. There was no like shortcuts. If you did, you'd get fucked every time, so you'd have to always way over engineer everything for smell and for vibration, and totally different than now. Now it's like, no, carbon filters barely sell at my friend's grow shop because it's like, why, you know? Like, you're
Well,
like,
who cares?
yeah, you're like, we wanted to make the neighborhood fucking loud, bro. Like, they're all proud, and you know, it's like, okay, I guess it was, especially when it comes to big grows, because a lot of them are connected to the dispensary, so they're instead of like, you know, a lot of them aren't neighborhood-ish, but if they are, that's the only time they get in trouble. But for the most part, if it's like not a neighborhood and you're driving, it's almost like a restaurant. You want to use your nose. So if you go by a place and go like, holy shit, it smells good, you're likely to stop. You know what I mean? I think that's the kind of the only selling point. Because there's a few times where I'm like, I'll look at the shop and I'll be like, that's almost impossible. That shop sucks so bad, but yet that weed just smells good right there. So it's like, it's confusion. Maybe the neighbors, you know, probably. It's not like, usually if there's one grow here, it's like there's at least 10 around it, you know. It's like just no one's really advertising. What's the legal side like in Indiana and places like that? Now they're like the last on, or?
Yeah, I don't know. My family's from Indiana, and they've been struggling with the CBD dilemma, but it sounds like they're passing legislative stuff now so Barney 5 doesn't come after stores anymore. So it sounds like they're smarting up on that situation.
But there's no like medical situation there yet.
No, not yeah.
It's one of the few. It'll be like Oklahoma, Indiana.
Oh, there's a few that just it's gonna hold out to the very end.
Yeah, I mean, do they still have like a lot of because there's a lot of states that border it though, right? There's like
Yeah, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois now, has some stuff. So it's just popping up everywhere, and I try to stay out of that area actually.
Right. Right. Yeah, I know. It's like here too. Like all the states that border here that were not like Kansas and places like that, were always like just blaming everything on Colorado. Like it's all Colorado. It's like. It's actually kind of like Holland's problem always was. It was like, actually, if you just guys like Belgium and stuff, if you guys just like legalize,
relax.
why don't you just have a couple shops yourself, and then no one will come over here anymore. It'll be like, that's easy, And never seemed to. It like strangely enough, it didn't happen at all. Only Portugal later, and they didn't even come close to like a coffee shop situation or anything like that. There's like no legal way to get it, and so. But decriminalized, like smart, a good thing, but not necessarily the same avenue that the states has gone nuts. That's one of the reasons I moved back, because I wanted to be front row at this shit show that's happening, which is kind of like state by state, it's sort of morphing into even more of a money drain. It seems like they've made it to the point where it's almost like impossible to make money, because like we tried to go over numbers the other day, and it was just like it's like $75 a pound. Like that's the profit, you know what I mean? You're like, that is not a lot of profit for a business, you know what I mean? If you only do like 30 a week or something, or 50 a week, you're like, okay, so 50 times 75 is not paying the, you know what I mean? That's like, right. That's their wholesale kind of model-ish. I mean, not exactly, but it's just getting beat up like, woof, do you think there's going to be much of a future on that side of it all, or do you think that's going to? I mean, it's weird. It's like the Bitcoin or something too, where it's like everyone thought it was going to make a lot of money, and all of a sudden it's like shit's going down now. I mean, of course, right. Got to hodl, right? HODL. You've seen that already, right? Hold on for dear life, right? You gotta. That's like the new cool thing to think about cryptocurrencies, and just gotta hodl, bro. Just gotta hodl. With cannabis, it's almost the same. Like I feel like it's gotten to the point where when there's that much cheap weed, then between certain people, there's got to be like sort of like don't drop below 1,300 or something to each other in some way, shape, or form. Whether it even just be in trade or something, it's something so you can keep that 13 range, because 13 seems like to me like the rock bottom before you're depressed. Like once you hit below 13, it's so depressing that it's like, oh, dude, 900, and that's what's happening now is a lot of 900s and 950s, and then it'll be 800s, and it's kind of like, and just because the love factor gets like that, like there'll be like $900 worth of love to that instead of $3,000 worth of love. You know what I mean? And that's how people are going to treat it, because they'll be like, well, if you're only going to give me 900, why would I, give it organic inputs, and
right?
Why wouldn't I just go synthetic and cheap and stretch it? So it starts to get like, yeah, it's a weird market where it's like it's consuming itself in a weird way, and it's also like the bigger players that come in that think like that. That's just for them normal business. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, we just take a loss for 2 or 3 years, pay our rent. Everyone else fails. We buy them all out. We become the that's the classic American tale, and that's happening every state, consolidation and stuff. And so like that's where it gets kind of like there'll be like maybe 1 or 2% of those people will do it right. You know what I mean? Like actually have a organic farm or be really conscious and stuff. And there'll be a couple, but majority, like probably 90+% will be like just not give a fuck, and so it's sad because of the plant being super like we thought invincible. Up until now, up until recently, it was like, oh, this plant, you'll always be able to fall back on this thing, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, it's like all of our, and like classically as a stoner, because I mean, I'm like I've got a new plan every week because I never know what's going to happen. It's like, oh, really? That's happening? Okay, well, guess we're not doing that anymore, or guess that incredible guaranteed save the day thing did not happen. That's happened to pretty much everybody in the industry, and it should have. And if it hasn't happened to you, then you definitely haven't been doing it long enough. And that's part of the skin thickening part of this industry where it's like, up until recently, you've been like, oh yeah, this is going to fucking forever, like, there'll always be cream will rise to the top. I mean, everyone says the same thing, like, we all kind of, and to the point where I said it to so many people, and then all of a sudden recently when people tell me, I'm like, kind of shaking my head, like, it's actually not true. Just like we talked about earlier, like, there's going to be a price point where people just don't care anymore, and it's like, so I feel like it's a little dangerous, but probably it's going to bounce back in the sense of, I think like it'll be a bigger barter system in the near future, just because that's how stoners think. We're like way more happy when we trade than when we do cash anyway, a lot of times. And I think it's like with a lot of things, because it's getting to that point where it's not a big deal. It's not like, you know, $800 difference or something. It's like $50 to $100 difference between whatever you're going to sell. You know, it's like if it's all in the 1,000 range, or so. I think that's going to become like, because $1,000 is still $1,000, but it's so hard to get $1,000 and be happy with it, even if it's like, you know, even if you grow a couple hundred of them, it's still like, dude. He started thinking back what it could have been and should have been, and how many other people are taking that and selling it at shops still for $60 an eighth or whatever. And you're like, you know, it's like the craziest industry, because there's still fucking places that are paying, and there's still people, you know, and that's the problem is like, it's like, I think everybody who like gets into the system and is like, all right, we got to do this and got to do this right. We can't divert and we can't do this. But he's like, because that person's not doing it. And because like, that's how I always, when I lived in Amsterdam too, it was always like, I'm not sending seeds back. And that's stupid because I'm here. I want to live here. I want to be legal. You know, I want to keep it all cool. And it was like, but you didn't realize that everybody around you was like doing it like crazy, and still is. You know what I mean? Like all this, and then you're like, oh, and you're like kind of like the. Yeah, it's a funny industry, because it's one of those ones where I think everybody kind of thought they had a little angle, you know, it's going to make it. And right now, again, like I told you before, seeds are really hot, but for how long, you know what I mean? And 1,000 new seed companies, there's a new seed company coming online every day, and there's a million new crosses of, you know, wedding cake and gelato and this and that, and it's just because it's hot, and it's like, I don't know. So I'm kind of hoping is that there's a little renaissance, cannabis renaissance, which will happen just because there's enough of us that are still like, it was a lot easier and simpler before when we had these, you know, basic things. And I think a lot of the old genetics that are out there, because they're in seed form, we can get them all back again. It's just like finding people who can like connect with them and be like, oh yeah, that's for sure that. Just like that guy was saying with the Durban, you know, like if you didn't know, and someone keeps telling you that something that tastes like Jack is that, then at a certain point you think everything's like, be all confused whether this was that or that. So it's like it's weird. It's like a closing book real soon, and we haven't quite got it figured out. So it's like, better fucking figure it out. So whenever we talk about all these people that travel the world and get to try all these different things, it's also a lot of interpretation too. So, you know, when you realize, when you actually hang out with these people, some of these people, not really great smoke, not really the most savvy smokers, you know what I mean? Oh, I only smoke with this fucking wooden pipe, or I only smoke with this. And you're like, oh no, not that, you know what I mean? Oh, dude, they're stuck in the set. Oh, I smoke with this prototype, you know. It's like, oh, like so, you know, a bunch of authors. I mean, we've met them all, right? We've met every author, and like, some of them just living off that one trip they did in the 70s and forever, you know what I mean? And there's other guys who really fucking put the grind in, and, you know, took 10 years to write a book, got all those stories, you know, 20, you know, some of these guys are just so fucking, I can't put it out. I've never put out nothing. I talk a book every week. So fucking, like, I guess one day I'll just write it all down. But, you know, but in general, we're testing a lot of those like those books, those old fucking. If you look at old Ed Rosenthal and old Cervantes and old Mel Frank books and stuff, it was like there was a lot of never actually did it information in there, like a ton of it. You know what I mean? Later on, when you actually, not that every one of them, but a lot of it was just like a guy told him once that especially with Ed, was a lot of that stuff where if you really read it, it was like, did you ever do this? You know, like. And so I think now we're putting a lot of this stuff to the test, and then the hemp stuff we're also putting to the test, and it's also weird because like Jack made some big claims too. So I'm like, okay, we'll see. Let's see if this is for real. You know what I mean? And right now, the failures are all in the distribution and the manufacturing, and those are like the two dead ends that kind of kill as far as the hemp go. And then with weed is the competition and the oversaturation kill. You know? So it's like we're in this like it should be happening. We should have houses being built, and we should be like there should be this whole other new industries developing. And I think maybe with the like graphene batteries and things like that, that whole side of hemp, when people kind of go, oh, we've got a ton of hemp, we can turn that into graphene, cool, we can make how much, and it actually is cost effective, because that's the whole thing is the problem with hemp is it's usually too good, so it fucks everything up. It's like, oh man, shit's too strong and broke all our shit, or whatever, or this doesn't fuck, it's like, it's always the too good of a product almost. They have to like, so it's weird that we can't like figure out where it should go. So hopefully we'll fix the food situation, because I mean there should be a lot more hemp food. It seems like that's kind of lacking too, where we got all the seed that's backing up. We got a kind of a, I mean, considering all the like tofu products out there and soybean and other companies that could easily just like incorporate that into their program if they fucking took the time, and probably wouldn't take much to put into it and realize like, oh, actually, it's not that hard. But it's weird. You don't see a lot of that stuff. It's conspiracy, man. It's a fucking conspiracy. No, but it is interesting to see that we're in that like time zone where we get to watch all these things open up in front of us and see if it works. And if it does, I'm stoked, and I think it will. Pretty sure.
Well, as more and more states come online, there's more in the Midwestern states in particular that are, oh, we're going to do hemp now. And they're putting more focus, I think, generally into fiber and grain production versus CBD. It's kind of like, oh, that's what they do in Colorado. Let them grow their CBD farms. Well, we got tractors here, so we're going to grow hemp, So it's, that's being very general. But, there's been people talking, well, we're going to put up a hemp processing plant or whatever, right? And so I've seen that dream happen time and time again.
Yeah, and that's the exciting side. That's the part that's going to be it's going to be the people who make the most money in the long run, because they're going to actually tap into something where everybody's going to need to come to them, because once you do things on that scale, you figure out by breaking everything, just like we talked about, like, oh shit, my tractor broke 10 times. I went out and bought this $5 million fucking thing from Ben Drunkers, and it's fucking like, and he got it from Germany, and it's like, all of a sudden revolution.
There's a real steep learning curve for too. Guys up north in Canada have been doing it for 10 years. They don't have a single combine problem harvesting at all. No. And the guy on the first day in North Dakota catches it on fire. So, there's some experience, just like any growing for sure.
Well, a lot of times too, it's like the machinery is designed for corn, and corn only grows to a certain thing, and then all of a sudden you can't like retool and dye your actual fucking thing, so they utilize whatever they got, and then it kind of beats up the part that they wanted to use. I've seen a kind of bunch of different headaches going along the road, and it's like the biggest problem. I mean, I remember in Switzerland when they were growing the first couple of years, and it was kind of wacky because it was like, did you go to Switzerland at all when you no, in those 2 years? They were growing like fucking fire mixed up with hemp. They didn't give a shit. They were just throwing it out also. I mean, they were like using it as a sort of, but when it came to harvest, they treated it like it was hemp, because that was part of the like, hey, look, we're not being all like going up and cutting buds. But as they showed this combine coming through and taking down plants, you'd be like, dude, I would love to like clean the blades on those things, because those things seem to be just cutting, because they were throwing down high THC. They had no limitations at that point. They were just kind of like, we're doing it. And then all of a sudden that came in, and then it like strain wise, they all did Finola and all these like kind of proven strains. But in the beginning there was like, I remember them coming to Amsterdam and buying seeds from everybody, and they were just throwing down hoops everywhere. And at the same time in the hemp fields, they were just mixing it up, and they didn't give a shit. And it was like, it was funny. I was watching just cutting down big old fat indicas, and it was like, oh my god, like paddles were hitting it, you know what I mean? Right before it went down, paddle, and then just like sucked it up, chopped off the top. So I was like, oh, they don't give a shit. But it was interesting because it was like, when Swiss do stuff, they don't mess around. They go big, you know what I mean? Even back in the day, it was like there was a time like around 94, 95 when all of a sudden they were on, and it was like everybody moved there. Luke from Paradise Seeds moved there. He brought his whole collection there, and I remember like getting a couple of requests from people for us to go out there. And I went out on a visit, and I was like, wow, they built a pollinator that's like bigger than this room that was all square sided, and it just kind of rotated real slow, and it's like, wow. Next one would come down, throw 100 pounds in it at a time, and it was just like. It's like, you guys don't fuck around, you know? Like, everything they did was big, and it was weird, because in Holland, we were, like, doing it the longest, but we were also in these tiny little hovels, you know what I mean? The biggest I did was 60 lights, and that was, like, big, you know what I mean? And that was at my house. I mean, I did a bigger operation, a couple hundred lights, but that was all illegal, and like, totally, you know, under the train tracks, an illegal spot, and guys were paying off to everybody, and it was very hard to do big spots there. Like there was moments in time in the 80s when they could do greenhouses, and that's obviously when everybody like did most of the work. And then all of a sudden after that, it was like a couple ballsy people with greenhouses and a few outdoors, and then a bunch of indoors. And all the indoors were, you know, a few big ones, but for the most part, a lot of like smaller, because obviously making seed and stuff too. But it's weird because the industry. I mean, I always tell everybody is like, if Amsterdam didn't do it, I mean, people bag on Amsterdam now because of the fact that a lot of that shit got mixed up and stupid, and a whole bunch of people do fakes and bullshit. We know that because it's Amsterdam. It's the pirate capital of the fucking world almost. Like all the pirates live there now. They're, you know, but at the same time, they actually did a disservice. They did do a service as far as creating a haven, a literal like pirate haven for all these growers and people. And when they came, they, you know, back in the day. When Eagle Bill came and when all these people came, they were all like refugees and brought their genetics. And I mean, JJ from Advanced Nutrients, he brought over his Neville's early girl, his actual Silver Pearl before there was Silver Pearl, because I was working at Sensi at the time, and it was like, and I remember going like, hey, I got this thing, and my friend brought it, and they were like, yeah, you know. And then later when Neville came over and took over their collection and everything, it was like, he's like, how the fuck did you guys got my work before, huh? Like, he was all confused, and I was like, well, you gave the guy in America, oh, you know, it was like before he went down and everything. But it was, you know, people just came with their babies, you know, got arrested and all my shit, and I managed to bring my clones, and that was the interesting part about it there, was I was like, it was the worst place in the world you could actually go, if you think about it, but everybody went anyway. You know, I was like, oh, let's go to the most obvious place in the world. We're getting busted. Let's go to Amsterdam. You know, and it happened on more than one occasion. And it went to the point where you'd be like, you do realize that this is probably the most obvious place that you could ever be. And they want to come like for the cup or something. You know, I just want to come and hang out in the cup. And you're like, the most wanted man in the world wants to hang out in the cup. You know, it's like, okay, good idea. Start the mask, start the new mask sort of ritual. But no, it was... a lot of times, I mean, it was also, you know, nowadays, travel in between countries, things like that, it's so much different. It's like riding a bus, you know, and you're already, you know, you're cattled in here and you're cattled out there. But for a lot of people, Amsterdam was there once a year or twice a year or 3 times a year, fucking 5 times a year. I had people who came like every fucking 2 months. They'd be back, I'm back, you know, I'm back. And I was like, okay. Could never get enough. But nowadays it's like it's $22 to $30 a gram in the shops there. You know what I mean? It's like a complete reverse. Like the prices have gone completely. Like it's no longer the $5 a gram like it used to be. And people come over and be like, $150 an ounce. That's crazy. You know, that'd be like, to them, that's nuts. And now here in town are $89. You know what I mean? So it's almost like, and there it's $22 a gram. So if you start doing that in the math, you're like, wait a minute, really? Holy shit, you know, for a half ounce here, there, it's, you know, literally like 3 ounces here or something, you know, and you're like, oh my God, that's nuts. But, yeah, I think that the whole world kind of stabilizes in the next 10 years just because the weird thing about cannabis is it's always been the most fucking consistent thing in the world. Like, if you think about price-wise, like, we've had crazy prices, but we've also had a consistent run of just like to me and my friends, it's always been $5 a gram. That's just the way it's been. Like, I was just like, oh yeah, you know, and it's just, that was when I was 16 and that's now when I'm 47. It's weird. It's like the same. I mean, it may have gone up, but I never really charged my friends more than that. I was always like, I'd want to pay about $5 a gram, and hash would be like 10. It was like really like we weren't really complicated. But then later when bubble hash came in and we started to add more, okay, now there's more work, or there's but for the most part, the flour prices are probably one of the most. So as a commodity in the future, it could be the most stable commodity in the world because it kind of stabilizes itself at a certain point. And even if we're growing, $800 pounds, there's still going to be people selling in shops and nice containers and whatever, and charging for, you're really just buying a container in the end. And, the product won't be unfortunately, the thing that guides people as much. But let's hope that the cream rises. Let's hope that all the work that we put into this plant is not in disdain and totally wasted time. But get ready for the worst, at the end of the day. Hopefully it works in your favor. I think we're going to tap out because we've been on now long enough. We always, usually hit the 3-hour mark, but we're like, 5 minutes short, 10 minutes short? 10 minutes short.
We are at almost 2:30 here.
Yeah, 2:30. That's a good time.
That's for me.
I know everybody's tired, and it's like I said, hit the 2-hour mark is always good. We like to do the 3-hour tour because it's like Gilligan's Island because we can sing the song and everything. So we're not allowed to sing the song anymore. Sorry, guys. That was the ending. No, we've never done that, but.
2.5 hour tour.
2.5. Yeah, this is a whole new
the
remix. So anyway, thanks for tuning in and listening to all our jogging about the good old days, and also a little breeding here and there. We spiced it up. It was good. And he would have been like less on the weed side and breeding. And then,
I'm more your social, cultural, anthropological type of girl.
And she brings it back. She brings back the memories because all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I was at her house, and see that automatically you remember the smell of her not cooking. So there you go. You'll be like, I remember the smell of you not cooking when I was there.
Yeah, I remember the front living room and the. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then that was when you lived above Rob, or no? That was
I lived under him.
Or under Rob, yeah. So there was rugs involved.
There was rugs. Sitting on a rug.
There was rugs involved if you were in that building for sure. Yeah, those were fun days. And you had the back entrance way. That was the little weird.
Oh, with the stairs and the
Yep, the weird stairs.
Yeah,
and then you got to meet Sid, of course. You got to meet all the fun people.
I did get to meet a lot of fun people.
And Sid, if you mentioned rugs to him, you're in trouble. He would have brought down 3,000 rugs, and
That's his retirement.
I know, his rug-tirement. Well, at least it's on the top floor. At least it's on the top floor in Amsterdam, because you would not want to be in the basement with your retirement of rugs in that town, because. That was the one thing about living there is we've had a few wake up, get to our shop in the morning and call Doug and go, Doug, you realize our entire shop is just filled with sewage from the fucking street because the whole pipe broke. Like that was that kind of town. So if you have a whole bunch of rugs, you want to be on the top floor just in case it ever, you have to unload onto a boat on your way out. Next week, we got any craziness going on, KTI?
First Friday.
Oh, that's true. First Friday. Okay, well, that's weird enough. Any guests? No idea. No idea on guests.
First Friday, yes.
Well, that would be 2, but he'll be late, so we can't count on him. That's a given. We know he already told me he's got to go for some sort of appointment first, so that's already like a guaranteed late. Start working on some crazy guests. This was an awesome week because I had this morning. KTI, everyone not believing I had a show. I said, I got Annie coming, don't worry. And then, boom, check my phone and go like, oh yeah, this is it. We've got a show. Bang. That's the way it works on the Adam Dunn Show. Planning. It's all about planning. Dragonfly Earth Medicine crew was in town. I missed them. They were here just yesterday. I tried to get them to change it. I said, come on, you're so close. But they were places to be. Short time, so next time. So they're awesome growers.
Yeah, they're awesome.
And our friend here at Duke is using their program, and his flowers are awesome. And it's just one of those things where you're like, okay, these guys, we had them on the show a few times. Their inputs are literally like they can no messing around. There's no possibilities of even not being if it's even questionable, it's fucking out. That's so I was trying to hit them up with ideas of how they could be like, well, did you? We don't do that. Boom, you know, it's like nailed it. So you should look into them, Dragonfly Earth Benison. And who else? Anybody else we need to shout out to? Of course, my beautiful wife Cece, who is not taking Nick to jiu-jitsu today because now he's online and getting his gi figured out. He's a black one, and yeah, he's ready now. It's fun. It's fun to watch. Yeah, for next week we'll have First Friday. It's going to be a reggae First Friday, man. Oh yeah. Yeah, reggae. Boop, boop, boop. So see you guys next week, and yeah, give us a shout if you got something you want to see. Oh, coming up soon though is the Dying Breed show. I think within the next 2 weeks. Dying Breed. Yeah. Oh, exciting. See you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.
Practically every one of the top 40 records being played on every radio station in the United States is a communication to the children to take a trip, to cop out, to groove. The psychedelic jackets on the record albums have their own hidden symbols.
This is a special question. We don't want you to smoke genetically modified ganja. We want you to smoke the real thing. We want you to smoke the natural herb. Some call it marijuana, some call it sensimedia, some call it lamb's bread, and some people call it ganja.